Chapter 51. Seeing that the two men's offensive had stopped, Lei Suo lowered his hands slowly, and the powerful aura emanating from his body gradually subsided. He first cast his gaze on Yushin, with a hint of imperceptible admiration in his eyes, and nodded slightly. Then, he turned around and said to Mara, "If I hadn't taken action in time, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been able to escape just now, and you would have been beaten to ashes with one blow." Moro knew in his heart that what Li Zhuo said was true, but as the former overlord of the universe, how could he admit defeat so easily? "So," he said angrily, "that's just your imagination. How can I, Mara, be defeated so easily?" Li Zhuo shook his head helplessly, with a hint of tolerance in his tone. "Young man, some tempers are normal. I understand how you feel. But you have to understand that there is a world outside the sky, and there are people outside the world." Mara gritted his teeth and said bitterly, "Boy, did you know that I dominated the universe tens of millions of years ago, before your ancestors were even born?" When Lei Suo heard this, he was slightly startled, then smiled, and said, "Millions of years? This unit of time measurement seems a bit small. For me, we measure time in epochs era?" Yushin's heart moved. This was the first time he heard this word. But seeing that Li Zhuo didn't explain, he couldn't ask any more questions. Although Mo Luo is arrogant, he also knows that Lei Suo is extraordinary. He just contradicted Lei Suo just to protect his own face. Seeing Lei Suo's pleasant expression at this moment, he also restrained his anger and asked slowly, "I wonder how you came to this galactic prison." Lei Suo pondered for a moment and said, "Galaxy prison? I don't know much about this world at the moment. I originally sealed myself here to avoid the destruction of the era." Mara asked curiously, "The era is broken? What does that mean? Can you explain it in detail?" Lei Suo smiled slightly and said, "You two have already begun to glimpse the door and have entered the realm of God level. As long as you continue to practice, you will know everything." After saying that, Lei Suo suddenly said "Hi." He stretched out his hand and grabbed it in the air, and the spiritual tree seeds on Yushin's body came into his hands. "Is this something that belongs to my at? This is not a good thing. It would be better to destroy it." After Lei Suo finished speaking, he pinched lightly and the spirit tree seeds turned into fly ash. Yu Tian was shocked. This was a key item to the place of origin, but it was destroyed by Lei Suo at will. But the opponent's strength is obviously far superior to his, and he is unwilling to contradict him face to face. So, he casually said, "Friend, this spirit tree seed is mine. Isn't it inappropriate for you to destroy it without saying a word?" Hearing this, Lei Suo nodded and said, "You are right. Then I will give you a heaven-suppressing talisman as compensation. It can help you withstand any attack in the reincarnation god realm." "The realm of reincarnation?" Yu Tian was confused, but still silently accepted Lei Suo's talisman. Li Zhuo suddenly said "Hey" again, as if he sensed something again. He stretched out his hand to grab it, and the Wendigo on Mora's body appeared in his hand. "It's my At's thing again. It seems that he has a big plan this time and is preparing to reach the sky in one step." Lei Suo said in surprise, "But this thing is not a good thing. It is better to destroy it." Having said that, Li Zhuo used his dark power, and the most precious treasure of the Galaxy Empire was destroyed by him. After destroying two things belonging to my At in a row, Li Zhuo seemed to be in a good mood. Upon seeing this, Mara immediately said shamelessly, "The treasure you just destroyed is mine. Shouldn't you compensate me with something?" Mara is a rare person with thick skin. The Wendigo was originally the supreme treasure of the Galaxy Empire, but it was only temporarily lent to him by Yu Tian to help him lift the seal. At this moment, he brazenly claimed it as his own. After hearing this, Lei Suo raised a faint smile and said, "If I hadn't taken action in time just now, I'm afraid you would have died a long time ago. Now if I take something from you, my rights will cancel each other out." When Mara heard this, he was annoyed, but he did not dare to say any more, so he could only gnash his teeth secretly. Seeing that the matter was over, Li Zhuo said, "I am awake this time, thanks to the help of my two friends. However, there is a certain destiny, which also indicates that the destruction of this era is about to begin. I hope you two will work hard and train hard, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Farewell." Before he finished speaking, Lei Suo's figure instantly disappeared in front of Yu Tian and Mo Luo, as if blending into the void. Is it teleportation? Yu Tian touched his chin and secretly speculated in his heart. At this time, after Lei Suo's intervention, the desire to fight between Yu Tian and Mo Luo has disappeared. Mo Luo said, "What are your plans now? If you want to continue fighting, although I am not as good as you, I am not afraid of you." Yu Tian glanced at Mo Luo and thought to himself, the Wendigo has been destroyed, and there is nothing in this world that can restrain Mo Luo. But it seems a pity to kill him directly. After all, he is still a super upgrade package. So, Yushin said, "Why are you pretending here? As long as you abide by the previous agreement, I can spare your life." When Mo Luo heard this, he felt relieved. He knew that a head-on confrontation with Yu Tian would only lead to a dead end. He had been imprisoned for tens of millions of years, and finally regained his freedom. He wanted to enjoy himself in the universe, but he didn't want to die so easily. So, Mara nodded and said, "Do you want me to deal with that space-time patrolman with you?" "Yes." Yushin warned, "From now on, you will follow my actions temporarily. If you dare to have any evil intentions, I will never show mercy." Mo Luo snorted coldly and said, "There is no need to threaten me, I know the appropriateness." Yushin saw that Mo Luo still couldn't let go of his body, so he didn't care. He looked around, saw Jack hiding in the distance, and flew over. "Jake, I'm sorry, I didn't expect there to be such a big movement this time," Yushin said apologetically. Jack had not yet recovered from the shock. He saw Lei Suo who stopped Yu Tian from fighting, and asked, "Who was that person just now?" "This person's name is Lei Suo. His strength is extremely terrifying, far superior to mine. If you encounter him in the future, you must be careful," Yushin said solemnly. Jack nodded to express his understanding, but was secretly horrified in his heart. Stronger than Yushin? This is simply unbelievable. Then, he looked at Mo Luo worriedly, "What should Mo Luo do?" Yushin said, "Don't worry, I have asked him to stay with me at all times. He can't cause any trouble." Jake suddenly whispered, "Yushin, can you completely eliminate him? Keeping him is a hidden danger after all." Yushin patted Jake's shoulder and comforted, "Don't worry, he still has some use, so I'll keep him alive for the time being. Trust me, I won't do anything to harm the Galactic Empire." Jia saw that Yu Tian had no intention of taking Mo Luo's life, a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes, and finally he nodded and said softly, "I understand, Yushin, you have your own considerations." When Yu Tian saw this, he smiled slightly and immediately found Dales who had passed out. Dales was still half asleep at the moment, muttering vaguely to himself, I am the next Emperor of the Universe." Yushin frowned slightly, stretched out his hand unceremoniously, and slapped Dales on the face with a snap, instantly waking him up from his dream. Dales trembled suddenly, his eyes widened instantly, and he looked at Yu Tian in confusion. Yushin immediately arranged for him and Jack to be responsible for the aftermath of the prison planet to ensure that everything was in order. After everything was settled, Yu Tian took Mo Luo and Dales, said goodbye to Jack, and embarked on the journey to the Purification Alliance. Chapter 52. Time flies, and after a period of space navigation, Yushin and the others arrived at the headquarters planet of the Purification Alliance. To everyone's surprise, the surface of the purified planet was covered with lush vegetation, and the air was filled with freshness and purity. Jijijija. This environment of purifying the planet is really refreshing. The moment Mo Luo stepped out of the spaceship, he took a deep breath of the fresh air on the surface, with a satisfied smile on his face. Yushin said in a deep voice, "Let's go, don't waste time, go directly to their headquarters." A strange smile appeared on the corner of Mo Luo's mouth, and he said meaningfully, "I don't think we need to take the initiative to find them. They have already delivered it to us." As soon as they finished speaking, a group of soldiers wearing silver armor suddenly appeared in front of them, each of them holding a laser ray gun that shone with cold light. The leading soldier shouted sternly, "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Purification Alliance's territory without permission?" At this time, Dales, who had been silent, finally found an opportunity to attack. He shouted loudly, his voice deafening, "I've never heard of the Miscellaneous Fish Alliance. Hurry and report to your leader. Tell him that Lord Yushin, the Emperor of the Universe, has arrived, so that he can welcome you." Yushin was stunned after hearing this. When did he become the Emperor of the Universe? Seeing Yu Tian's suspicious expression, Dales immediately flattered him and said, "Master Yushin, with your strength, you are more than enough to be the Emperor of the Universe. Frisia and Slug are just a bunch of low-class stuff." Yushin said yes softly and said nothing more. It was obvious that he was not interested in Dale's flattery. When those soldiers saw Dares being so arrogant, they immediately angrily rebuked, "You don't know the heights of the world, it seems you are here to die." After saying that, a group of soldiers rushed towards Yu Tian and the others like a tide. When Dale saw this, a sneer appeared on his lips. "I can't defeat Yu Tian and Mo Luo, and I can't defeat you trash fishes? It's time to stretch out my muscles and bones when I'm just serving tea and pouring water these days." Dale's body flashed and he immediately disappeared from the sight of the soldiers. "Where is the person? Why did that person disappear?" The soldiers suddenly saw Dale's disappearing and immediately caused a commotion. At this moment, Dale seemed to have crossed the boundaries of space and appeared silently in front of a soldier in an instant. His movements were as fast as lightning, and his punch came out with the sound of howling wind. Bang! A loud bang. A soldier was directly punched away and fell heavily to the ground. Dale struck while the iron was hot and quickly continued to attack the surrounding soldiers. His speed was as incredible as a miracle to these ordinary soldiers, so much so that in their eyes, Dale seemed to appear in multiple locations at the same time. Bang! 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 Continuous crashes came one after another, each time accompanied by the figure of a soldier falling to the ground. In an instant, all the soldiers were knocked to the ground one by Dales with amazing speed and power. They struggled painfully and could no longer stand up. Yushin observed silently and thought to himself, although Dales caused a lot of damage to these soldiers, he obviously left some room for it and did not kill him. Presumably he took his own feelings into consideration and did not want to cause dissatisfaction in his heart. Dales looked around, and after confirming that there were no more soldiers who could stand, he turned to Yushin with great pride and asked for credit, "Master Yushin, what do you think of my performance? Are you satisfied?" Before Yu Tian could speak, Mo Luo snorted at the side, "Humph, I just eliminated a few insignificant pawns, what's there to show off? My vision is too narrow." Hearing this, Dales felt displeased in his heart, but he did not dare to make a mistake in front of Mara. He quickly bowed his head and apologized with a smile, Yes, Master Maluo taught you a lesson, I have learned a lesson." Yushin interrupted at the right time with a calm tone, "Okay, it's time to get on with it. I can sense that there is a very powerful being on this planet, and it must be their leader Rikik." A sneer appeared at the corner of Mo Luo's mouth, "It's just a slightly larger miscellaneous fish." The three people immediately turned into streams of light and rushed towards the central city of the purified planet. In an instant, they were over the headquarters of the Purification Alliance. Humph, this headquarters is really crude. Compared with the glorious palace of Frisia's legion, it's nothing like clouds and mud. Dales looked down from the air and commented disdainfully. Although Yu Tian did not respond directly, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. He was obviously surprised by the simplicity of the Purification Alliance headquarters. At this moment, another group of patrol soldiers quickly surrounded the three people. "Stop! Who are you? How dare you break into the headquarters of the Purification Alliance?" The soldiers' shouts and questions broke the silence. Dale smiled contemptuously. "It's time to show off your strength again." He couldn't wait to say, "Master Yushin, please wait a moment, I will get rid of these troublesome guys immediately." Yu Tian nodded and called Dales and Mo Luo to follow him. One of the reasons was that he was too lazy to do everything himself. After getting Yushin's acquiescence, Dales flashed and rushed into the group of soldiers again. After a burst of punches and kicks, the soldiers fell down one after another. This Purification Alliance, let's just change its name to the Miscellaneous Fish Alliance. No one can fight it. Dales mocked, his tone full of disdain. "Oh? Do you really think so? I saw an alien with a triangular head wearing a red suit walking out." Seeing this, Yu Tian nodded secretly. This person should be Rikik, the apparent leader of the Purification Alliance. When Dales saw Rikik, a playful smile appeared on his lips. "Who do I think you are? It turns out to be you, the loser who hides here and there all day long." His words were full of provocation. When Rikik first saw Dales, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, as if he mistook him for someone, but he soon regained his composure. He glanced at Dales coldly and said calmly, "It turns out it's you, Dales. Weren't you captured and imprisoned in the galactic prison?" When Yushin heard this, he was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that the two people knew each other. When Dales heard this, he burst into laughter. He shook his head proudly and said, how can the galaxy prison imprison a person like me? The cage there is just a temporary shelter for me. Now, I have regained my freedom and follow the new emperor of the universe, Mr. Yushin, to dominate the entire universe. Hearing this, Rikik's eyes flashed with surprise. He quickly turned his gaze to Yushin, as if assessing Yushin's strength. After a moment, he slowly spoke, "When I heard that you betrayed Frisia, I was still a little confused. Now it seems that you have found another master." Having said this, Rikik paused, and a coldness flashed in his eyes. "Okay, then I'm here to ask for advice and see what's so special about this so-called Emperor of the Universe." His eyes were like daggers, shooting towards Yushin coldly, as if he wanted to see through him. When Dales saw that he was being ignored, he immediately snorted in displeasure, flashed his figure, and flew to the opposite side of Rikik in an instant. "Are you worthy of fighting Master Yushin? You should pass me first and then talk." At this time, Dales had received the gift of Yushin's natural power, and his combat power had soared to an astonishing 5 million, and his strength was no longer what it used to be. This was exactly what gave him the confidence to provoke Rikik as soon as they met. I saw Dales clenching his hands into fists, and there was a cracking sound between his knuckles. The aura around him suddenly increased, and a terrifying energy surged out of his body like a huge wind and a huge wave, sweeping around, making the surrounding people the air trembled. Obviously, he is ready to compete with Rikik and show his extraordinary strength. Now. Chapter 53. Rikik looked at Dales, who was full of fighting spirit in front of him, with a contemptuous smile on his lips, and said softly, "Dales, do you know? Even a strong man like Frisia has to restrain his arrogance when facing me." When Dales heard this, his eyes flashed with disdain. "What era has it been, and are you still mentioning Frisia? If I met him now, I would crush him to pieces in an instant." Rikik shook his head, with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "You seem to be still immersed in your own fantasy. Compared with Frisia, there is still a big gap between you." These words were like a fuse, instantly igniting the anger in Dale's heart. He yelled, "Little Frisia, how can you compare with me? I will let you see the true strength of dares now." After saying that, Dale's arrogance surged around him, like an angry lion. His feet flashed, and he rushed toward Rikik like lightning, and punched out with devastating power. Mo Luo, who was not far away, saw this scene and snorted coldly, with a trace of disdain flashing in his eyes. He is indeed an idiot, for underestimating the enemy so much. Faced with Dale's fierce offensive, Rikik seemed unusually calm. He turned to one side and cleverly avoided Dale's attack. At the same time, he said calmly, "You are not even as good as Frisia, how can you be my opponent?" Dales missed the blow, and couldn't help but be shocked. But he quickly adjusted his condition and immediately gathered a powerful Qigong bomb and hit Rikik in the face. However, at such a close range, Rikik remained calm. His whole body quickly leaned back, dodging Dale's attack again. Seeing that the blow failed again, Dales became even more angry. Gathering his strength, he punched Rikik again. The wind roared with this punch, and bursts of sound of breaking through the air filled the air, as if it was about to tear the surrounding space apart. Bang! The sound was deafening. The menacing punch was unexpectedly received by Rikik with his palm. "Dales, don't you understand? There is an insurmountable gap between you and me," Rikik said coldly, while kicking Dales. This kick was extremely fast, like lightning piercing the night sky, making a sharp whistle. Dales was shocked and quickly crossed his arms to resist with all his strength. But Rikik's power was too powerful. The moment his arms came into contact, it was like being hit by a giant hammer. Just listen to a click, crisp and loud. Dales's arms were instantly fractured, severe pain instantly surged through his body, and his face turned pale. But the battle is not over yet. Taking advantage of the victory, Rikik pursued the attack, dodged his body, and suddenly clasped Dale's broken wrist tightly. Dales felt a powerful force coming from Rikik's palm, as if he wanted to crush his wrist. A hole. He struggled hard, but Rikik's power was as heavy as a mountain, preventing him from moving. At this moment, Rikik's voice sounded in Dale's ears, cold and ruthless, "Dales, the distance between you and me is as far as heaven and earth." After saying that, Rikik waved his arm and threw Dales out. Dales fell heavily to the ground like a kite with broken strings, vomiting blood, and completely lost his combat effectiveness. Why? Why did I lose again? I obviously have nearly 5 million combat power, but I still lost so completely? Dales, who was lying on the ground, couldn't understand. He increased his combat power to 400,000 for the first time, but was tricked by Yushin, and finally his strength was sealed and imprisoned in the galaxy prison. After finally regaining his freedom, he met Mara again, was knocked away by a look, and fainted. This time, with the help of Yushin, his strength greatly increased. He was originally full of confidence, but his arms were broken by Rikik's kick. Mara on the side looked at Dales, who fell to the ground with cold eyes, shook his head and said disdainfully, "What a waste. It's just a small piece of fish, and it still needs my help." However, just when he was about to take action, he suddenly found that Dale's anger was rising continuously as he fell on the ground. Yushin also noticed this change and said softly, with a little surprise in his eyes, "You, BD. I, Dales, am the future emperor of the universe. How can I just lie down like this?" I saw Dales standing up staggeringly by relying on his astonishing willpower. Rikik was slightly surprised when he saw this scene. As expected of a scion, they are all invincible. But even if you stand up, it will be in vain. Is it, all in vain? Dales gritted his teeth and finally stabilized his shaky body. Immediately afterwards, his breath began to rise sharply at an alarming speed, like a raging torrent, unstoppable. This breath contains endless power and anger, as if it is going to swallow up everything around it. As the aura surged, powerful air waves swept out like huge winds and waves, instantly involving the surrounding gravel as if to tear them into pieces. Boom! The loud noise was deafening, as if the sky was shattering. With Dales as the center, a huge energy wave was suddenly released like a volcanic eruption, instantly covering everything around it, forming a huge vacuum zone. In this vacuum zone, everything became silent, only the astonishing energy was raging wantonly. This kid, Mo Luo, who was in the distance, saw the changes in Dales and couldn't help but exclaimed, "This kid's appearance seems to be a little different. I'm really angry, Rikik." A cold voice came out of Dale's mouth. His hair turned into dazzling gold at some point, and his pupils changed from black to deep green, surrounded by streaks of golden flames burning. After Yushin saw it, his expression was stunned. Dales turned into a super scion. Chapter 54. Rikik's eyes were fixed on Dales, and when he saw the golden aura surrounding him, he raised a hint of approval at the corner of his mouth. "Yes, it does look better than before. It's a bit interesting." The corners of Dale's lips raised, with a hint of disdain in his sneer, "Is it just a trick? Rikik, today I will let you witness with your own eyes what true transformation is." After saying that, Dale's body shot out instantly. The speed was so fast that it left an afterimage that was dizzying. Rikik's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes showed a bit of solemnity. He responded calmly, "It's indeed a lot faster, but it's still not enough." Before he finished speaking, Rikik had accurately captured the flaw in Dale's offensive. His body swayed, like a sharp sword unsheathed, and he punched with a thunderous momentum, directly hitting Dale's vital point. At this critical moment, a strange smile appeared on Dale's face. I saw him tapping his toes, speeding up again, his body twisting strangely in the air, and successfully avoiding Rikik's heavy punch. "What?" Rikik was stunned. The moment his fist fell, an ominous premonition surged into his heart. "It seems that your reaction is still a bit slow." Dales's voice was a bit joking, and then, like a beast that was ready to attack, he suddenly kicked out. This kick was powerful and heavy, pointing directly at Rikik's chest. Bang! There was a deafening bang. Dale's attack hit Rikik firmly. The latter was suddenly thrown backward by this powerful force and hit a building not far away. Boom! The fragile building could not withstand the sudden impact and collapsed instantly. For a time, bricks and stones were scattered everywhere, and dust covered the Sunday. "Haha, Rikik, do you have any last words?" Dales succeeded with one blow, the corners of his mouth curved in triumph, and his laughter was full of contempt. The smoke slowly dissipated, and Rikik's figure gradually emerged from the haze. His clothes were torn and covered with dust, making him look particularly embarrassed. He gently wiped away the blood that overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Although his voice was calm, it contained suppressed anger. "I admit that I did look down on you before. Even though your hands were injured, you were still able to hurt me so much. I'm afraid your strength is already above Frisia's." Hearing this, Dales laughed loudly. "I said, next time we meet someone like Frisia, I can wipe him out in a flash." Rikik's eyes instantly became sharp. He regarded Dales as a real opponent for the first time and said in a deep voice, it seems that I have to show my real skills and see if you can catch my 3 moves. Dales sneered, at this point, empty words can't save you. Rikik turned a deaf ear to Dales's taunts and calmly uttered a few words, whether it is empty talk, you will soon understand. Before he finished speaking, he quickly waved his hands, and a series of Qigong bombs flew towards Dales like a meteor shower. Faced with Rikik's dense Qigong bomb attacks, Dales seemed calm and unhurried. I saw him waving his hand casually, and the Qigong bombs were bounced one by one and scattered everywhere like beaten rubber balls. Boom! 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 The entire Purification Alliance headquarters suddenly seemed to have been baptized by a rain of meteorites, with explosions one after another, smoke filling the air, and a mess. It's just a small trick. An attack of this level is just a child's play to me. Dale's mocking words echoed in the smoke. However, during this moment of distraction, Rikik had cleverly used the cover of Qigong bombs to silently approach Dales. Damn it, when did you? When Dales saw Rikik appearing in front of him, he suddenly panicked. A sneer appeared at the corner of Rikik's mouth, his eyes flashed, and the knife suddenly swung out, like lightning piercing the night sky, hitting Dale's neck directly. The speed is astonishing. Not good. Dales exclaimed, and he quickly raised his hands to prepare for defense. However, because the injury on his arm had not yet healed, his movements were even half a beat slower. In a duel between masters, this moment of hesitation is enough to determine the outcome. Dales failed to follow up and was hit hard by Rikik in an instant. Click, click, click. The sounds of broken bones sounded one after another. Rikik's blow directly shattered the bones in Dale's neck, and the remaining force spread throughout his body, making him feel as if all the bones in his body were about to shatter. Dale's eyes suddenly became distracted, and his body fell feebly downwards from the air like a bird with broken wings. But Rikik didn't stop there. He gathered all his strength and punched the falling Dales like thunder. This punch was as fast as lightning, carrying the energy of destroying the world, whipping up a strong wind, stirring the entire space. At this moment, Rikik was like a god of war descending from the sky, majestic and inviolable. If this blow hits, Dales will definitely die. Yushin's face instantly darkened, his displeasure was palpable, and he was about to step forward. However, Mara next to him took the first step and spoke coldly, how dare a mere ant act so recklessly here? Before he finished speaking, a purple stream of light cut through the long Moro flashed in front of Dales in an instant, and easily blocked Rikik's fatal blow with only one finger. Boom! The fists and fingers intertwined, and a deafening sound accompanied by air waves overflowed, as if the entire space was to be torn apart. In an instant, everything seemed to be still, and Rikik's earth-shattering punch was easily resolved by Mara's finger. At the same time, Dales returned to normal and fell to the ground with a plop. After the smoke dissipated, Mo Luo spoke calmly, boy, do those who kill me in front of me pretend that I don't exist? Rikik was shocked. Although he had noticed that Yu Tian and Mo Luo were extraordinary in strength before, he never expected that they were so strong. He pondered for a moment and said coldly, seeing that your subordinates are in danger, you finally couldn't help but take action. Mo Luo snorted coldly, I just don't want to lose a servant to bring me tea and water. Then, he added, you know that he is mine, but you still dare to kill him so painfully. It seems that you don't take me seriously at all. Rikik held his head high and said proudly, I, Rikik, never look at anyone's face when doing things. Mo Luo laughed, let me see how long your madness can last. You will definitely die today. When Rikik heard this, he was shocked, but he had no way to retreat. His eyes were blazing and he responded coldly, okay, then let me learn your clever tricks. A cunning light flashed across Mo Luo's eyes, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he said slowly, I don't mean to make things impossible. Let's do this. If you can catch my 3 moves without falling, I will spare your life today. Naturally, Moro had no intention of letting Rikik go easily. He was thinking in his mind and decided to retaliate in kind, using the same method that Rikik had used to deal with Dales, to play a trick on this guy who didn't know how to deal with the world. Rikik was not a dull person and could see through Mara's intention at a glance. However, at this moment, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and prepare for Mara's attack. He gritted his teeth and said, what a strong tone. I want to see how strong you are. Upon hearing this, Mo Luo sneered, waved his hands suddenly, and instantly launched countless Qigong bombs. These Qigong bombs were exactly the moves that Rikik used against Dales before, but now they were used by Moro, and they were many times more powerful. Chapter 55. Facing the dense Qigong bombs, Rikik's heart skipped a beat. He could clearly feel that the energy contained in each Qigong bomb was much more powerful than the ones he had fired before. He quickly mobilized his aura to the limit, swayed his feet, and shuttled through the gaps in the Qigong bombs as if he were at his limit. In the end, he miraculously escaped this round of attacks. Just when he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, Mo Luo chuckled and said mockingly, "Do you really think you've escaped?" I saw Mo Luo wave his big hand, and the Qigong bombs that had flown past turned around instantly and flew towards Rikik again. Oops! Rikik felt bad. He was unable to dodge at this moment and could only watch the Qigong bombs explode on his body. Boom! 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 The bursts of huge explosions were deafening, and countless Qigong bombs exploded on Rikik's body, setting off waves of violent whines and waves. When the smoke and dust dissipated, Rikik was seen in ragged clothes, with almost no intact flesh and blood on his body, and his injuries were so deep that his bones were visible, which was shocking. At this time, his spirit was listless, his eyes were dull, and his breathing became weak and rapid, as if he would die at any time. This round of fierce attacks made Rikik deeply aware of Mo Luo's terrifying strength. Seeing that Rikik was still holding on despite being severely injured, Moro couldn't help but have a proud smile on his face, clapped his hands and praised, "Not bad, not bad. You are quite capable of surviving my first move. Then, next is the second move. I want to see how you deal with it." Before he finished speaking, Mo Luo's body swayed and flashed behind Rikik. Rikik felt a chill coming down his back, and then he received a heavy blow from Mora on the back of his neck. Ah! Rikik screamed in pain, a mouthful of blood spurted out, his consciousness blurred for an instant, he could no longer maintain his flight, and his body fell straight from the air. Seeing this, Mo Luo curled up into a sneer, "Not bad, not bad. He's not dead yet. Then, the third move is next. If you can block this move, I will let you live." After saying that, Mo Luo clenched his right hand into a fist, and a burst of purple flame instantly rose into the sky. His eyes flashed with cold light, and his whole body turned into a meteor, blasting towards Rikik at an astonishing speed. This blow was so powerful that the air seemed to be torn apart by the roar of the fist wind. Rikik! At this critical moment, an anxious cry came from a distance. Yu Tianxuan looked around and saw two blue streams of light flying towards him as fast as lightning. One of them is none other than Space Patrol Son Goku. Unfortunately, it's too late. Mora naturally heard the shouts, but at this moment his fist had already hit Rikik's face. Boom! A loud noise. Deafening. The whole world seemed to be trembling. Under the terrifying power of Mo Luo's punch, Rikik's body was blown apart and turned into countless tiny fragments, scattering in all directions. A pungent smell of blood filled the air, and everything around him was shocked by the power of this punch, as if even time had stopped. Mara stood there coldly, his eyes burning like a ruthless god of war. The two people who came for reinforcements stopped when they saw this, and the whole scene fell into strange silence at this moment. Suddenly, a breeze blew gently, taking away the last trace of Rikik left in this world. Damn it, I'm too late and it's too late to teleport. Time and Space Patrol Officer Son Goku witnessed the tragic situation in front of him, his expression was solemn, and his eyes flashed with strong hostility. Yu Tian sighed softly, with mixed feelings in his heart. Unexpectedly, the first time we met, we formed a relationship with this grandson Goku. It seems that you have gone too far. Time Patrolman Son Goku said slowly. Moro was a little surprised when he saw the appearance of Space Patrol Son Goku, but soon returned to normal. A sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth and he said disdainfully, Mara, do what I do, why do I need you to tell me what to do? It seems that you are the Mara of this world of origin. Space-Time Patrolman Son Goku said coldly. Mo Luo was stunned when he heard this, and was obviously unfamiliar with the term world of origin. What do you mean? What is the origin world? Space-Time Patrol Officer Son Goku said, the world of origin is what we call it. To you, I come from the 37th world. The more Mara listened, the less he understood. 37th world? What nonsense are you talking about? At this time, another person who came with D37 Son Goku spoke, you don't need to know that much, because you will go to see the King of Hell soon. Yushin looked and saw that it was Vegeta. He is really inseparable from Son Goku. It's just that this Vegeta's outfit is very strange. He is wrapped in a grey robe, making it difficult for people to understand his identity. Mo Luo sneered, "Who do you think you are, dare to talk to me like this?" Vegeta in black robe stretched out his thumb, pointed at himself, and said arrogantly, "I am from the 93rd world. Remember, my name is Vegeta." Mara said angrily, "You are really seeking death if you act arrogantly in front of me." After saying the cruel words, Mo Luo did not take the initiative to attack, but turned around and flew back to Yu Tian. He had already sensed the extraordinary nature of the two of them, so he did not act rashly. Yu Tian sent a message to Mo Luo, "Have you discovered anything?" Mo Luo's voice transmission replied, "I can't sense the life energy of these two people, and my natural power seems to have no effect on them. It's really strange." Yushin nodded, he also found the same thing. D93 Vegeta sneered, "What are you two secretly communicating over there? Have you already discussed an escape route?" Yushin looked calm and said, "From the tone of your voice, it seems that you are not from this world. I wonder what you are doing here." D37 Son Goku said seriously, "We are mainly looking for one person. This person will bring ultimate chaos to all worlds in the future, and we must try to get rid of him." Yushin's heart tightened and he asked warily, "Who?" D37 Son Goku said solemnly, "We call this person the Origin." Originator? Yu Tian was slightly startled, this title was not unfamiliar to him. It was the person that the Maya Patriarch had been searching for. At this moment, a diddy beep sound suddenly sounded from D37 Son Goku and D93 Vegeta. The expressions of the two people suddenly became shocked, and they each took out a compass-like object from their arms. Yu Tian looked around and saw that the bright red pointer of the instrument was firmly pointed at him at the moment. He couldn't help but feel an ominous premonition in his heart. Chapter 56. D93 Vegeta's eyes were as sharp as an eagle, locked tightly on Yu Tian, and slowly spoke, "What an unexpected surprise. I thought it would take some trouble, but I didn't expect that fate would be so generous and send you directly to us." Yushin frowned slightly, a hint of wariness flashed in his eyes, and asked, "What do you mean by this? We don't seem to be familiar with each other." D37 Son Goku on the side interjected, "I didn't expect you to be the originator. I can only ask you to come with us." Yu Tian's brows furrowed even more tightly, "Not to mention whether I am the originator in your mouth, just based on your words, you want me to follow you obediently? This is too childish." D37 Son Goku looked serious and persuaded, "It's better to follow us to see the Supreme God. Maybe we can avoid some unnecessary suffering." D93 Vegeta interrupted impatiently, "Why bother? The Supreme God's will is clear. If you encounter the originator, kill him without mercy." When Yushin heard this, his eyes instantly turned cold, and he said word by word, "There is no enmity between us. Just because of someone's empty words, you want to take my life? This logic is too ridiculous." D93 Vegeta sneered, his voice as cold as a knife, "Stop pretending, the originator is the most evil existence in all worlds and the source of chaos that will bring the end of all things." Yu Tian mocked, "It's really ridiculous. Just one unfounded statement gave me such a big label. Besides, I don't think I'm the originator." D37 Son Goku answered, "The Eternal Compass has clearly pointed to you, who else could it be if it weren't you? What's more, your cooperation with Mora is enough to illustrate the problem." When Mo Luo heard this, he snorted coldly, "You seem to know me very well." D37 Son Goku chuckled and explained, "In this endless universe, each world has countless dimensions and time and space, and naturally there are countless you. Since the Supreme God connected all the mirror worlds, you can calculate for yourself how many you there are in this world." Mo Luo sneered, "I don't understand what you are saying, but I know that I am a unique existence." D37 Son Goku did not refute, just nodded and said meaningfully, "As a Mara from the world of origin, you do have some unique qualities." D93 Vegeta waved his hand impatiently and interrupted the conversation, "Kakarot, stop nagging them. We have to deal with this originator quickly to avoid further complications." D37 Son Goku heard this and nodded slightly. His eyes became extremely solemn, staring at Yushin silently, as if he was measuring Yushin's strength. The tense atmosphere quickly spread in the air like substance. Yushin was also on full alert. He didn't know much about the strength of these two people, but he knew that these two people should never be underestimated. Especially since they also have powerful skills such as fusion, Yushin has to deal with them carefully. Luo was also secretly vigilant, his eyes flashed with a cold light, and the aura on his body began to rise, ready for a fierce battle at any time. D93 Vegeta turned to look at D37 Son Goku, with a hint of provocation in his tone. Kakarot, shall I go first? D37 Son Goku shook his arm with a confident smile on his face. I'd better do it first, let me try the originator's skills. After saying this, without waiting for D93 Vegeta to reply, D37 Son Goku turned into a stream of light and rushed towards Yushin like lightning. Court Death. Upon seeing this, Moro immediately flew up and met the attack of D37 Son Goku. Bang! A loud noise. Deafening. D37 Son Goku was directly punched by Mora and fell to the ground like a cannonball. Damn! It hurts. D37 Son Goku was lying on the ground, reaching out and rubbing his swollen cheek. TCH. It's really useless. D93 Vegeta said with a hint of disdain in his eyes, mocking coldly. Mara smiled proudly and said, I thought you were so capable, but it turns out you are just a trash fish, nothing more than that. D37 Son Goku heard this and stood up like a carp. He patted the dust on his body, and then flew to the opposite side of Mara, facing him from a distance. You seem confident. D37 Son Goku asked. Mara replied proudly, that's natural. No one in this world is my opponent. After saying that, he glanced at Yu Tian and then changed his words, of course, we have to dig out that guy. D37 Son Goku heard that Yu Tian's strength was still higher than that of Luo, and a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. As expected of the originator, he does have some strength. It seems that I will also show some real skills. After D37 Son Goku said this, he suddenly opened his arms and roared loudly. The sound was deafening and echoed in the sky above the entire purified planet. The energy in his body seemed to erupt like a volcano, rapidly rising exponentially. Waves of powerful aura surged out of him, sweeping around like huge winds and waves. What's going on? When Luo saw this, his eyelids twitched suddenly, and a trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes. He felt the rising energy in D37 Son Goku, and he couldn't help but feel an indescribable sense of crisis in his heart. With the outbreak of D37 Son Goku, with him as the starting point, a shocking energy aftermath swept in all directions. This wave of energy was like a tsunami, carrying a devastating force that instantly tore the surrounding air into countless fragments. Immediately afterwards, the entire purification planet began to vibrate continuously, as if it could not withstand such a huge energy impact. The ground trembled. The rocks cracked. D37 Son Goku's light became more and more dazzling, and his energy fluctuations reached an unprecedented and astonishing level. At this moment, his image has also undergone a huge change. His long black hair is draped over his shoulders, and his red hair covers his arms from his chest to his arms like armor. His eyes are golden and piercing. When Yushin saw this, his expression was solemn. D37 Son Goku has transformed into Super Saiyan 4. Moro looked at the D37 grandson Goku in front of him, and couldn't help but feel an indescribable shock in his heart. However, he still said, boy, the energy has indeed improved a lot, but don't think that this can change anything. D37 Son Goku raised a confident smile on his lips, his eyes full of fighting spirit. Really? Then I have to ask you for advice. Before he finished speaking, his figure had turned into a bolt of lightning. The speed was so fast that it was a qualitative leap compared to before, instantly shortening the distance between him and Luo. Seeing that the situation was not good, Luo's eyes flashed and he snorted coldly. I said, your strength is far from enough. He stretched out his figure, launched a flying kick, and carried the whistling wind directly towards D37 Son Goku. Just when he was full of confidence and thought he was about to succeed, D37 Son Goku's figure disappeared without a trace in an instant. Teleportation. Yushin was shocked. Even he could not catch the slightest movement of D37 Son Goku. He immediately judged from experience that this was D37 Son Goku's signature skill, teleportation. Moro obviously doesn't understand D37 Son Goku's routine. Just as he was in shock, D37 Son Goku appeared behind him in an instant, and his right arm suddenly swung out, hitting him hard on the back. Chapter 57. Boom. An earth-shaking loud noise seemed to tear the entire space apart. Mara's mountain-like body was suddenly smashed to the ground under the blow of D37 Son Goku's concentrated power. A bottomless pit with an astonishing diameter was formed amidst the roar. The surrounding ground seemed unable to withstand the impact of this force, and ferocious gaps opened up. D37 Son Goku raised a proud smile. How about it, now you know how powerful I am. Yushin was floating quietly in the sky not far away, his face as calm as water. D93 Vegeta frowned slightly and shouted loudly, "Idiot, Mara is not that easy to deal with." As soon as he finished speaking, D37 Son Goku felt an unprecedented sense of crisis suddenly come, as if something terrible was about to wake up from the dust. From the billowing smoke and dust, a Qigong wave as bright as the scorching sun suddenly erupted. It came with a roar that ripped through the air, and hit D37 Son Goku at an incredible speed. D37 Son Goku immediately dodged, and the Qigong wave almost whizzed past his clothes. The strong wind brought by it made his martial arts uniform rustle, as if it would be torn apart by this force at any time. What a close call, I almost got hit. D37 Son Goku was secretly shocked. He turned back to look at the gradually dissipating Qigong wave, with a bit more solemnity and vigilance in his eyes. As the smoke gradually dissipated, Mo Luo's figure slowly appeared. He stood up slowly, moved his slightly stiff neck, and raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Your instant disappearing move is very good, but the power of the attack is still a bit lacking. To me, it's like scratching an itch. D37 Son Goku heard this and his eyes flashed, really? Then I will increase my efforts and I won't let you down again. After saying that, his figure disappeared again, and the next moment, he appeared on the left side of Mo Luo, with his right fist clenched, and like a thunderous thunder, he slammed towards Mo Luo. At this moment, Moro was on guard against D37 Son Goku's moves. His eyes flashed and he quickly stretched out his palms. That seemingly random grab accurately captured D37 Son Goku's speeding fist. The two people's forces collided in the air, creating a powerful shock wave that shook the surrounding air. I have seen through your trick of disappearing in an instant, it is of no use to me anymore. Moro said in a cold tone, and at the same time grabbed D37 Son Goku's fist. However, D37 Son Goku is also experienced in many battles. He turned around, took advantage of the situation, rose up, and kicked Mo Luo in the head with a sharp sweep. The whole set of movements is smooth. Seeing this, Moro hurriedly evaded, and at the same time grabbed D37 Son Goku's legs and wrists, and said in a cold tone, "Do you think you can defeat me like this? You're so naive." The battle between the two became increasingly fierce, and every attack contained the power to destroy the world. Their figures intertwined, fists and kicks were exchanged, dust was flying for a while, Qigong waves were shooting out, and the whole scene was full of tension and excitement. "Aren't you going to go and help?" Yushin suddenly turned his head and asked softly to D93 Vegeta in the distance. D93 Vegeta raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth, with a hint of provocation in his voice. "What? Could it be that you can't hold it any longer and want to go out and try your skills yourself?" Yu Tian shook his head slightly, looked at the battle between Mo Luo and D37 Son Goku solemnly, and said slowly, "Based on the current situation, if you don't lend a helping hand, your companions may be in trouble." D93 Vegeta heard this, raised his eyebrows slightly, and said confidently, "You seem to have underestimated Kakarot's ability. He is not helpless against a mere demon." After hearing this, Yushin's eyes flashed with surprise, and then he looked at the disadvantaged D37 Son Goku, thoughtfully in his heart. D93 Vegeta suddenly said intriguingly, "Besides, what does his victory or defeat have to do with me? He was the one who insisted on his own way and took the lead. Why should I help him?" Yu Tian said lightly, "Oh? You don't seem to care much about his safety. Isn't he your best comrade?" D93 Vegeta heard this and looked Yushin up and down, with a hint of probing in his tone, as expected of the originator. "From your words, I can feel that you know something about me. Maybe you have traveled to other worlds. However, I want to tell you that Vegeta in my 93rd world is a unique existence." There was an unquestionable arrogance in his words. Yushin asked curiously, "What's the difference?" D93 Vegeta suddenly smiled strangely and said in a low voice, "In my world, Kakarot died in my hands." "What?" When Yushin heard this, his expression changed slightly. This information obviously exceeded his expectations. He didn't expect that in another world, such a thing would happen. D93 Vegeta saw this, a proud smile appeared on his lips, and continued, "Okay, you just need to remember, don't think that you can fully understand me, Vegeta, by traveling to several worlds." Yushin nodded and said solemnly, "Your words really shocked me. There is one thing, what kind of existence is the supreme god you are talking about? I have never heard of it in this world. D93 Vegeta looked solemn and said slowly, the supreme god is the peerless strong man who has reached the only state in the mirror world. He has accomplished something almost impossible and has become the supreme being in all the worlds of sight. There was a hint of admiration and awe in his tone. You must know that under normal circumstances, reaching the only state can only be achieved in the world of origin. Hearing this, Yushin nodded secretly. These secrets are undoubtedly a new understanding for him. D93 Vegeta suddenly broke the silence, with a hint of imperceptible relaxation in his tone. Actually, it's not completely impossible for us to cooperate, right? Hearing this, Yu Tian frowned slightly, obviously surprised by these words. Didn't you say before that the Supreme God has issued a kill order for me and there is no room for cooperation between us? D93 Vegeta sneered, we are not puppets of the Supreme God, so why should we blindly follow his orders? Coming to Origin Universe this time is a rare opportunity for us. Only here can my strength be truly improved and break through the previous limitations. Speaking of this, he seemed to remember something unpleasant, and his face became gloomy. In the previous world, I was always subject to various constraints, and I was even worse than a mere god of destruction. When Yushin heard this, his eyes flickered, then how should we cooperate? D93 Vegeta took a deep breath, a flash of determination flashed in his eyes, bring me the Vegeta of this world, and I will kill him with my own hands. At this point, he paused and then added, in exchange, I will kill Kakarot for you. Chapter 58. After hearing D93 Vegeta's proposal, Yu Tian did not rush to respond, but narrowed his eyes slightly and asked with a bit of inquiry in his tone, before you decide to take action, can you tell me why you insist on killing D93 Vegeta in this world? D93 Vegeta raised a sneer on his lips, seemingly not shying away from this question. It's okay to tell you. Only by personally ending Vegeta in the Origin world can I absorb his unique soul of origin and replace his position in the Origin world. Hearing this, Yushin nodded slightly, a glimmer of understanding flashed in his eyes. I see, this way, you can get the opportunity to hit a higher realm. Yes, you are very smart. D93 Vegeta nodded in approval, but then his tone changed. However, you seem to have too many questions. Now, you just need to tell me whether you are willing to accept the conditions I proposed. Yushin noticed that D93 Vegeta's tone showed impatience, and he was obviously unwilling to reveal more. So, he stopped asking and just nodded, okay, I promise you. But in exchange, I hope you can help me deal with Son Goku first. D93 Vegeta chuckled, a hint of cunning flashed in his eyes, do you think I am so gullible? Unless you bring Vegeta of this world to me first, I will not take action easily. Yushin pondered for a moment, and finally nodded, it's okay, but you must first promise not to help Son Goku. D93 Vegeta thought about it and said, okay. After saying that, the two people's eyes turned to the battle situation in unison. The battle between Mora and D37 grandson Goku has entered a fierce stage. Although D37 grandson Goku tried his best, he was still at a disadvantage. Despite this, D37 Son Goku's strength still exceeded Yushin's expectations. You know, the average Super 4 are completely vulnerable to Mo Luo. Boy, you do have some ability. Mora said coldly. However, if I can return to the peak state of my youth, I can suppress you in a snap. D37 Son Goku said, really? That's such a pity. I can't compete with you in your strongest state. After hearing this, Mara said confidently, even so, it's more than enough to deal with you. As soon as he finished speaking, Moro seized an opportunity and punched D37 Son Goku in the face. Just listen to a loud bang. Like thunder in the sky, deafening. D37 Son Goku was instantly knocked back dozens of meters away. His body drew a long arc in the air, and the majestic boulders along the way exploded and turned into gravel flying all over the sky. Mo Luo stood there with a proud smile on his lips. He looked at the fallen figure of D37 Son Goku and said contemptuously, do you only have this strength? It seems that this game is going to end here. Boom. D37 Son Goku knocked away all the gravel on his body, and then jumped up. At this moment, his clothes were torn, and there were many shocking wounds on his body. His clothes were dyed red with blood, and his breathing was rapid and heavy. He was obviously approaching the limit of his physical strength. He stretched out his hand and wiped it gently, and the remaining blood at the corner of his mouth was wiped away, and he slowly spoke, I have seen you in other worlds before, but I have never had the chance to fight against you. Today, I have made up for my previous regrets. When Luo heard this, he snorted coldly, with a trace of disdain flashing in his eyes. What does your so-called Mara from other worlds have to do with me? I am a unique existence. After speaking, he slowly raised his hands, palms facing each other. A destructive energy began to gather in his hands, and the purple light gradually lit up, dazzling and dangerous, as if it could swallow everything around it. This terrifying energy caused the heaven and earth to change color. Just the aftermath caused the surrounding rocks to scatter in all directions. The scene was shocking. This blow will completely wipe you out of this world. Mara's voice was accompanied by a sneer as he prepared to deliver a fatal blow. When D37 Son Goku saw this, his expression was solemn, but his eyes were burning with unyielding flames. His hands also began to gather energy, and blue light burst out instantly, in sharp contrast to the purple light of Mora. Okay, let me see how powerful you are. D37 Son Goku's deep voice echoed in the wind. Turtle. Groob. Gas. At the moment when Luo sent out the Qigong wave, D37 Son Goku also shouted the last word, achievement. Two huge energy waves collided together instantly, like the collision of two planets, erupting with an earth-shattering sound. Boom. The two energies were locked in a stalemate in the air, as if it was a battle of wills. Under the impact of this force, the surrounding space seemed to be ruthlessly torn apart, and slender cracks loomed in the air, revealing a doomsday-like atmosphere of terror. For a time, strong winds blew up, rocks rolled down, dust flew, and the entire purified planet was enveloped by this destructive force. Boy, do you think you can beat me? Mara roared loudly, the sound was like thunder. The energy wave of the two people's stalemate can be seen with the naked eye moving towards the direction of D37 Son Goku, carrying a force that destroys the world. Yushin stared at the battlefield tightly, nodding secretly in his heart. In his opinion, the power of Mara is almost unbeatable. In this battle, Mara should be safe. He looked at D93 Vegeta from the corner of his eye, and saw that the latter had an expressionless face, obviously not intending to intervene, as if he was waiting for the result. D37 Son Goku is still resisting with all his strength, but it is obvious that he is about to be defeated. His figure was crumbling under the impact of the energy wave, as if he would collapse at any time. Is it really going to be over? No. You must not fall. At the moment of life and death, D37 Son Goku suddenly roared. His muscles seemed to be injected with invisible force at this moment, and they tightened rapidly. A red light suddenly appeared around him, burning like a flame on his body's surface. As the light shines, D37 Son Goku's energy begins to increase rapidly, and an invisible force boils in his body, pushing his power to continuously exceed the limit. The originally calm air seemed to be ignited, becoming hot and restless. The sand and gravel on the ground began to vibrate, and soon they couldn't resist the impact of this force and exploded one after another. Yu Tian was slightly startled. He did not expect that in this life and death situation, D37 Son Goku would break through again and transform into the Super Saiyan 4th Super Full Power. Mara, it is still unknown who will win. D37 Son Goku roared. He pushed hard with both hands, and the opponent with Mara was pushed deeply by him. The blue energy wave was like a furious wave, surging and unstoppable. This is impossible. Moro exclaimed. He did not expect that D37 Son Goku could have such a huge increase in energy in an instant. Boom. A loud bang. I saw Luo's figure being swallowed up by the huge blue energy wave. The energy wave was like a huge whirlpool, as if it was going to crush Luo completely. Chapter 59. As the aftermath of the Qigong wave spread, the entire world seemed to feel the impact of this destructive force. The mountains trembled, the air roared, and every inch of space was filled with a suffocating sense of oppression. Yushin couldn't help but frown slightly at this moment, and a rare look of solemnity flashed in his eyes. The smoke dissipated, and the scarred figure of Luo slowly appeared. At this moment, his clothes had been torn to pieces, his whole body was covered with scars, and he looked quite embarrassed. When D37 Son Goku saw this scene, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He originally thought that his thunderous blow was enough to make Mora lose his fighting power, but he didn't expect that the opponent could still stand. Mara's eyes were red, like burning flames, and he roared, "Boy, you have completely angered me. Today, you must pay the price for your actions." D37 Son Goku chuckled and responded, "Oh? Really? But now it seems that you are no match for me, Hearing this, Mara became even more furious and yelled, "A hole!" Immediately, his body flashed and turned into a stream of purple light, quickly rushing towards D37 Son Goku. However, just when he was about to touch D37 Son Goku, his eyes suddenly blurred, and a tall figure appeared out of thin air, blocking his way. It's Yushin. He looked at Mo Luo calmly and said calmly, "You did a good job. Leave the rest of the battle to me." After half a day of observation, Yushin has a full understanding of the strength of D37 Son Goku. At this moment, he finally decided to take action himself. Seeing this, Mo Luo did not hesitate at all, nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll leave the rest of the battle to you." Yu Tian smiled slightly and threw 2 fairy beans to Mo Luo, "Eat one, and it will heal your injuries immediately. Give the other to Darius, and you two should retreat to a safe place." Moro took the fairy beans, nodded silently, turned around and flew to the side of the seriously injured Dales. After arranging all this, Yushin turned around and looked at D37 Son Goku sharply, "Your strength is indeed beyond my expectation. I admire you very much, but it's a pity that we have different positions after all. Today I can only take your life." D37 Son Goku looked solemn, but not afraid. He clenched his fists and responded, "Really? Then please enlighten me." Yushin chuckled, and his eyes gradually changed from black to purple. Facing an opponent like D37 Son Goku, he directly entered a mysterious state. When D37 Son Goku saw this, his expression was solemn and he was ready for battle. "In a life and death battle, don't blame me for bullying you into losing your physical strength," Yushin said calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, his feet swayed, and his figure disappeared instantly, rushing towards D37 Son Goku with lightning speed. His speed was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning that instantly cut through the night sky. Seeing this, D93 Vegeta's eyes suddenly flashed. It was obvious that he was also very afraid of Yushin's strength. Facing Yushin's rapid attack, D37 Son Goku did not panic. Just when Yu Tian was about to hit him, he instantly moved to Yu Tian's left side and kicked Yu Tian's waist with a sweeping leg. However, Yushin seemed to have anticipated this move. He chuckled and stretched out his hand to directly block D37 Son Goku's attack. "Teleportation? It's a pity that this move is useless to me," Yushin said calmly, and at the same time, he hit D37 Son Goku hard on the face with a backhand punch. Boom! A loud noise echoed in the night sky, and D37 Son Goku was punched into the ground by Yu Tian. The gravel flew and formed a semicircular pit several meters in diameter. Seeing this scene, Mara was silent. He once had an inseparable fight with D37 Son Goku on the battlefield, but at this moment, D37 Son Goku was easily knocked away by Yu Tian. This huge contrast made him realize again the gap between himself and Yushin. At the same time, Dales, who had just woken up, happened to witness this scene. He widened his eyes and said in horror, "What? Such terrifying power! I can't see their movements clearly at all." After Yushin succeeded in the attack, he did not stop his offensive, but quickly flew towards the fallen D37 Son Goku. He launched a fierce attack again, hitting D37 Son Goku hard in the heart with an elbow. D37 Son Goku was unable to dodge at this moment. The moment he was hit by Yushin, he spurted out a mouthful of blood and his eyes began to become blurry. However, Yushin seemed to feel that this was not enough. He flew up and kicked D37 Son Goku from the ground into the air, and then his hands began to gather powerful power. A dazzling blue light appeared in his palm, and a terrifying energy wave filled the air instantly. The surrounding buildings exploded and collapsed under the aftermath of this energy. Such powerful energy! Is this the true strength of Lord Yushin? Dales looked at Yushin's violent attack in horror, his eyes filled with shock, as if he had witnessed some incredible power. Mora still remained silent, but his concern for this battle could be seen from his tense expression. D93 Vegeta on the side witnessed Yushin's fierce offensive, and he said to himself, "Are you planning to kill Kakarot with one blow?" D37 Son Goku felt an unprecedented crisis. At this moment, with his remaining willpower in mid-air, he immediately gathered energy with his hands and wanted to fight back again. When Yushin saw this, he sneered, "How much physical strength do you have left? You'd better die honestly." As soon as he finished speaking, a huge energy wave burst out from Yushin's hand, like a roaring death dragon, rushing towards D37 Son Goku with lightning speed. This energy wave exuded a terrifying aura, as if it was going to swallow up everything around it. D37 Son Goku immediately used turtle-style Kigong to fight back, but his power was too weak compared to Yushin, and the Kigong waves he sent out were instantly dispersed by Yushin's powerful energy. D37 Son Goku failed against the wave and was immediately swallowed up by huge energy. The powerful energy continued to tear his body apart. After a scream, D37 Son Goku's body fell from the sky and lay motionless on the ground. Yushin looked at D37 Son Goku and saw that he had returned to normal at this moment. Apparently he no longer had any physical strength to maintain the transformation state of Super Saiyan 4. He breathed a sigh of relief and said slowly, "It's over." From the beginning when facing D37 Son Goku, Yushin used all his strength to ensure that no accidents would occur. He knew very well that the strength of D37 Son Goku should not be underestimated, so he was not careless at all. However, at this moment, D37 Son Goku's trembling voice suddenly came, D93 Vegeta, the next step is up to you." His face was as pale as paper, and his breath was so weak that it seemed like it would disappear at any time. Yushin was shocked after hearing this. He did not expect that D37 Son Goku was not dead after his full blow. However, he had no intention of landing the final blow, but turned to look at D93 Vegeta. He wanted to see what decision D93 Vegeta would make. Chapter 60. D93 Vegeta had an uncertain expression, and finally walked slowly to D37 Son Goku, looked down at him, nodded, and said, "Okay, Kakarot." D37 Son Goku heard this and showed a smile. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred. D93 Vegeta suddenly stretched out a hand and instantly penetrated D37 Son Goku's heart. He didn't hesitate at all with this blow. D37 Son Goku obviously did not expect that D93 Vegeta would suddenly kill him. He widened his eyes and took a deep look at D93 Vegeta, his eyes full of shock and confusion. But soon, his eyes lost focus and became distracted. His body also completely lost its vitality, lying there quietly without any movement. D93 Vegeta's behavior surprised Mora and Dales on the side. They did not expect that D93 Vegeta would attack his companions. Yushin also frowned slightly. He looked deeply at D93 Vegeta and said, "You are indeed very different from the D93 Vegeta I know." D93 Vegeta responded coldly, "Really? I have said before that I am unique and different from those trash." He paused and continued, "Besides, if I don't do this, I'm afraid you won't completely trust me." After hearing this, Yushin fell into silence. D93 Vegeta gently used Kigong, dried the blood on his hands, waved it casually, and said lightly, "I have fulfilled your request, and now it's up to you. When do you plan to bring Vegeta of this world to me?" Yushin thought for a moment and responded, "I still need to think about this." D93 Vegeta was not anxious after hearing this and just said, "I can afford to wait." At this moment, Mo Luo suddenly flew over. There was a fierce light in his eyes, and he said to Yu Tian without hesitation in front of D93 Vegeta, "He is the only one left now. Should we take the opportunity to kill him to avoid endless troubles?" However, D93 Vegeta remained as normal. He slowly turned around, looked at Mora coldly, and said, "Mara, in my world, you died in my hands because you talked too much." After hearing this, Mora was furious. He glared at D93 Vegeta and roared, "Boy, what did you say? I think you are impatient with life." D93 Vegeta just sneered when he heard this, with disdain in his eyes, "I'm just stating the facts. If you think that you can easily defeat me after defeating Kakarot, you are really wrong. If you don't believe it, just give it a try." There was strong confidence in his words. Upon hearing this, a trace of anger flashed across Mora's face, and he was about to step forward to compete with D93 Vegeta. At this moment, Yu Tian reached out to stop him in time, shook his head slightly, and signaled him to calm down. Yushin turned around and looked at D93 Vegeta quietly. After thinking for a moment, he slowly spoke, "I can consider a partnership with you, but before that, I need to know what value you can bring to me." D93 After hearing this, Vegeta raised his eyebrows slightly and snorted dissatisfiedly, "I have solved the problem of Kakarot for you, but you don't seem to have provided any equivalent exchange. Isn't it supposed to be what value you can bring to me?" Maro laughed at the sight and sneered contemptuously, "Killing a half-dead piece of trash, do you really think you have made a big contribution?" D93 Vegeta's face instantly darkened. He stared at Mora with cold eyes and said in a cold tone, "If I had helped just now, I'm afraid you would be the one lying down now. Don't underestimate my power, otherwise you will regret it. Upon seeing this, Yushin winked at Mara, signaling him not to anger D93 Vegeta again. He spoke slowly, with a hint of mystery in his tone, in that case, I can tell you a secret message. D93 Vegeta was stunned when he heard this, and looked at Yushin with some vigilance. What secret information? I'm not the kind of person who can be dismissed casually. Yushin smiled slightly and spoke slowly, in this world of origin, there is a magical place, which we call the place of origin. The opportunity to break through the realm is hidden there, and it is a holy land that countless strong people dream of. When Mo Luo and Dales heard Yu Tian's words, they couldn't help being slightly stunned, with a look of surprise on their faces. They obviously didn't expect that Yushin would mention the place of origin to D93 Vegeta. D93 Vegeta's heart skipped a beat. When he heard the opportunity to break through the realm, a fiery light flashed in his eyes, the place of origin. I don't know about this. Please tell me in detail. Yushin smiled and said nothing when he heard this, and seemed not to reveal too much information about the place of origin. D93 Vegeta curled his lips dissatisfied when he saw this. TCH, what's the use of just saying this? If you want to cooperate with me, show some sincerity. Hearing this, Yu Tian smiled slightly and said slowly, as long as you are willing to sincerely cooperate with me, I will naturally take you with me when I go to the place of origin in the future. However, how much you can gain depends on your own destiny. D93 Vegeta thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, since you said so, I will temporarily agree to cooperate with you. As a sign of sincerity, I will tell you some important information. Yushin smiled slightly and showed strong interest. Want to hear the details? D93 Vegeta said solemnly, this time, Kakarot and I are not the only ones coming to the origin world, there are many others. When Yushin heard this, his eyes flashed. Obviously he attached great importance to this news. Who else? D93 Vegeta shook his head and frowned. Only the Supreme God knows this secret. But you can rest assured that the current power of the world bridge cannot allow the arrival of a God of destruction level figure. When Mara on the side heard this, his eyes flickered, as if he was thinking about something. Yushin asked tentatively, then what you mean is that someone like the God of destruction might come to take my life in the future? D93 Vegeta laughed coldly. It's not just the God of destruction. Over time, Angel, Grand Priest, and even Xeno, other characters you can't imagine, will come. Hearing that Xeno will come in the future, Yushin's heart skipped a beat, but he remained calm on the surface. Then the Supreme God you mentioned, will he come in person? Chapter 61. Yushin tried to find out more information about the Supreme God from D93 Vegeta. D93 Vegeta shook his head again. I don't know about this either. Essentially, his realm is too high. If he comes forcibly, it is likely to cause fierce resistance from the origin world. Yushin nodded, I understand. D93 Vegeta continued, I'll tell you another piece of information, so you don't have to be too afraid. Restricted by the world bridge, we cannot leave the teleportation area too far from the beginning, otherwise we will suffer severe backlash once we lose contact with the original world. However, D93 Vegeta changed the topic. Over time, this restriction will gradually disappear. Yushin nodded, indicating that he understood the current situation. D93 Vegeta saw this and said, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. He obviously didn't want to stay here any longer. Yushin slowly opened his mouth and said, wait, there's one more thing. Have you met Klin? According to previous news from the Galactic Empire, Krillin had appeared in the area of the Purification Alliance, and he hoped to get some clues from D93 Vegeta. D93 Vegeta was stunned for a moment, then reacted and said, are you talking about the hairless earthling? I've never seen it. However, in my world, he has already died at the hands of Frisia. There was a hint of disdain in his tone, and he was obviously not interested in Klin. Hearing D93 Vegeta's answer, Yushin's heart sank. He knew that he couldn't get any more information about Krillin from D93 Vegeta, so he had to find another way. At this moment, D93 Vegeta suddenly changed the subject and asked, since you know Krillin, you must also know Bulma, right? How is she doing lately? There was a trace of concern in his tone, which surprised Yushin. Yushin immediately replied, she is fine. He didn't expect D93 Vegeta to care about Bulma's situation, which slightly changed his view of D93 Vegeta. D93 Vegeta nodded when he heard this and said, that's good. After I get rid of the shackles of the world bridge in the future, I will go over to see her. If it is convenient, you can take care of her for me. Bulma was now Yushin's woman. He didn't know how to answer for a while, so he had to say yet. D93 Vegeta continued, if you meet someone named Yamcha, get rid of him for me and don't let him meet Bulma. No one can get involved with my woman. When Yushin heard this, he knew that he would have a battle with D93 Vegeta sooner or later. He changed the subject and said, since there is nothing else, let's leave first. D93 Vegeta nodded and said, okay, don't forget our agreement. Yu Tian no longer wasted time and quickly left the purification planet with Mo Luo and Dales. D93 Vegeta silently watched their departing figures, with a complicated light shining in his eyes. Not long after they left, D93 Vegeta's shadow suddenly started to move strangely. Then, a dark figure slowly emerged from his shadow, like a ghost rising from the water. This figure slowly twisted and changed in the dark air, and finally condensed into a clear human form. Krillin actually left the earth. His eyes were extremely strange, the whites of his eyes disappeared without a trace, leaving only two bottomless black pupils, like black holes that swallowed everything in the night, exuding a deep chill. D93 Vegeta on the side looked as usual, seemingly unaware of the changes around him. Starry Sky, in the universe spaceship. You let that kid go so easily. You are leaving trouble for yourself. In my opinion, just kill him and it will be over. Why are there so many troubles? Mora's dissatisfied voice sounded in the cab. Yushin frowned slightly and explained, I have promised him before that as long as he does not join forces with Son Goku, I will cooperate with him. I cannot go back on my promise and break my promise. Mara sneered disdainfully, breach of trust? In this world where power is paramount, what is credibility worth? It would be easier to kill him directly. Yushin shook his head gently and said slowly, you may be right, but you also heard what Vegeta mentioned. If so many people from the mirror world have really arrived, we must act cautiously and be strategic. Mora raised his eyebrows with a hint of provocation, oh? What's your clever strategy? Yushin thought for a moment, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, I need you to join forces with Dales to form a universe force. The mission of this force is to track those people from the mirror world and eliminate them one by one. When Dales heard this, his eyes immediately flashed with excitement, this idea is great. I completely agree with Lord Yushin's plan. He has always cherished the dream of becoming the Emperor of the universe, and Yushin's proposal undoubtedly fits his mind. However, Mara poured cold water on him coldly, why are you so excited? With your little strength, it's better to die. You'd better do your job of serving tea and pouring water obediently, and don't cause any trouble. Dales was choked by Mara's words. Although he was unwilling to do so, he did not dare to offend him and could only nod in agreement. Mo Luo turned to Yu Tian with a somewhat provocative tone, also, our cooperation should end here. Why should I continue to help you? Yushin smiled slightly, looking confident, have you forgotten what Vegeta said? Those people in the mirror world will take the initiative to kill the original self in the origin world and seize the heart of origin. You don't want to be killed by Mara from other worlds, right? He paused and continued, what's more, didn't you say before that strength is the most important thing in this world? Why, now you don't listen to me anymore. Mo Luo was speechless for a moment by Yu Tian's words, and he snorted coldly, don't threaten me with this. However, the first sentence you said makes some sense. I don't think the Mara in other worlds will be merciful to me. Well, I will promise you for the time being. Dales couldn't help but interjected and asked, Master Yushin, what are your plans? Aren't you going to act together with us? After hearing this, Yushin responded in a deep voice, I plan to go to the Galaxy Empire first. He had made a promise to the Galaxy King to help him improve the combat effectiveness of his soldiers, so this trip was inevitable. After that, Yushin decided to return to Earth and catch up with Bulma. This time he didn't go back for quite some time. Immediately afterwards, he planned to go to the planet Adrid to learn teleportation. In future battles, he will face more powerful opponents, and teleportation will undoubtedly become an important skill for him to save his life. At the same time, this will also provide convenience for him to travel freely in the universe. In addition, Yushin also hopes to use the skills of teleportation to find Beerus and Whis as soon as possible in order to gain greater strength. Chapter 62. Time flies. After Yushin helped the Galaxy King improve the strength of his soldiers, he quickly returned to Earth in a spaceship. In 753 AD, the western capital. The afterglow of the setting sun filled the sky, dyeing the whole world golden. Yushin returned to Bulma's home with ease. He skillfully pushed open the door and walked into the living room, but did not find Bulma. Yushin frowned slightly, activated his life perception ability, and searched for Bulma's aura. Soon, he sensed Bulma's life fluctuations and found her in the basement. So, he went down the stairs and came to the basement door. Yu Tian gently opened the door and walked in quietly. The basement was filled with various instruments and equipment, and Bulma was standing in front of a pile of bottles and cans, concentrating on her research. Her eyes were fixed on the test tube in her hand, and she was operating it carefully, completely immersed in the world of scientific research. Yushin stood aside quietly and did not disturb her. He stared at Bulma's side face, watching her work seriously. After a while, Bulma finished what she was doing and raised her head. When she saw Yushin standing aside, a surprised smile appeared on her face. "You're back. Why didn't I hear you come in?" Yushin walked to her with a smile and hugged her gently. "Seeing that you are so focused, I can't bear to disturb you." Bulma nestled in Yushin's arms, with a gentle smile on her face, and asked softly, "How is it? Did the matter go smoothly this time?" Yushin sighed softly and replied, "Although we gained something, we still couldn't find Klin's whereabouts in the end." When Bulma heard this, she frowned slightly and sighed, "There has been no news about my sister, and my family is very worried about her." Yushin thought for a moment and said slowly, "Actually, I have a theory. I think your sister might have been taken away by Klin." "What? Krillin took my sister?" Bulma asked in surprise, an expression of disbelief on her face. Yushin nodded and explained, "Do you still remember what Gok said at the beginning? He said that Krillin was flying on a special spaceship for the Galaxy Patrol. I thought it was a little strange at first, but then I thought about it carefully. Only your sister owns a spaceship like that." He paused and continued, "More importantly, the time when your sister disappeared exactly coincides with the time when Klin disappeared. This is such a coincidence that people have to connect the two things together." After listening to Yushin's analysis, Bulma nodded thoughtfully, "What you said makes sense. In fact, I had such a conjecture at the beginning. But based on my understanding of Klin, I really can't figure out why he would do this." Yushin patted her shoulder gently and comforted, "Perhaps only by finding Klin can we know the real reason." At this moment, the laboratory instruments suddenly sounded a beeping alarm. Bulma immediately broke free from Yushin's arms and quickly walked to the instrument to adjust it. Yushin followed curiously and asked, "Bulma, what research are you doing recently?" Bulma smiled slightly, her eyes shining with excitement, "I'm researching a genetic fluid that can help humans break through their physical limits." "Gene fluid?" Yu Tian was stunned for a moment, then showed an interested look. "Yes." Bulma nodded and smiled, "Do you remember the last time we went to the headquarters of the Red Ribbon Legion? I was deeply inspired by their plan to create artificial humans. I thought, since they can create humans, why can't I try to use scientific methods to help humans break through their own limits?" Yushin was stunned, "So you started researching genetic fluid later?" "That's right." Bulma said with a proud smile, "Didn't you also say that science can sometimes bring new possibilities to martial arts?" Yushin touched his nose. He actually didn't remember whether he said such a thing, but he didn't delve into the issue at the moment. He looked at the light in Bulma's eyes and knew that she was full of enthusiasm and expectations for this research. So he followed Bulma's words and said, "So how is the progress of your research?" Bulma smiled proudly and said, "I have successfully developed the first generation of genetic fluid. Didn't you notice any changes in me?" Yushin observed carefully and found that Bulma's vitality seemed to have increased significantly, and her skin had become firmer and shiny. He sincerely praised, "Amazing, Bulma." When Bulma heard Yu Tian's praise, a warm current surged in her heart. She lowered her head and her voice trembled slightly, "I just don't want to be a burden to you and want to share some of the pressure with you." Yushin gently held her hand, "How can you be a burden? You have always been my most important partner and have helped me a lot." Bulma raised her head and suddenly said, "By the way, Yushin, I'm planning to sign up for the world's #1 martial arts conference this time. Do you want to join me too?" Yushin was slightly surprised after hearing this, then smiled and shook his head, "I didn't expect you to still have this idea, so I won't participate, but I will go to the scene to cheer you up." With his current super blue level strength, he really has no interest in low-level competitions like martial arts tournaments. Bulma said, "After you helped me improve my combat power last time, I have been looking for opportunities to test myself in actual combat. This martial arts conference is an excellent opportunity. Yushin looked at her and smiled. Since you are going to participate in the martial arts competition, I will help you improve your strength before the competition so that you will not be bullied during the competition. Saying that, Yushin stretched out his hand and pointed at Bulma, and a soft force of nature immediately poured into her body. Bulma felt that her whole body was full of energy, and her fighting power was constantly rising. The effect of the genetic fluid is indeed amazing. In the past, Bulma's physical fitness could only be increased to 500 with the help of Yushin, but now it has increased by 50 times, reaching an astonishing 25,000. For Bulma, who had never done any training, this was simply a miracle. Feeling the energy fluctuations in Bulma's body, Yushin couldn't help but laugh. He now felt that Bulma might have bullied other contestants by participating in the world's best martial arts tournament. Bulma felt a huge increase in her energy and was so excited that she danced. Yushin, I feel so powerful now, as if I could blow up the earth with one punch. Yushin smiled and patted her head, you'd better not have such dangerous thoughts. Hearing this, Bulma and Yutian looked at each other and smiled. She gently took Yushin's arm and said softly, come on, let's go back to the house and sit for a while. The two of them walked hand in hand into the house, and soon came to the living room and sat on the comfortable sofa. Bulma poured a cup of hot tea for Yushin and handed it to his hand. Yushin took the teacup and took a sip of hot tea, warmth spreading in his mouth. He put down his teacup and asked impatiently, Bulma, how's Goku doing lately? Did he find the Dragon Ball? Chapter 63. When Bulma heard Yushin mention Son Goku, a trace of worry flashed across her face. Goku hasn't collected a Dragon Ball yet, and he suffered serious injuries while searching for the Dragon Ball. When Yushin heard this, his eyes narrowed, showing surprise. Goku is injured. Who did this? He was full of confusion, because in his memory, according to the original plot direction, Son Goku should be an unbeatable existence on the earth at this time. Bulma's tone revealed a bit of solemnity. It's a woman named Violet. I heard that she used to play for the Red Ribbon Army. Violet. Yutian repeated the name in a low voice, as if there were some vague impressions in his memory. This Violet, how strong is she? Yushin couldn't help but asked curiously. Bulma replied, according to Goku's description, she completely disabled Goku with just one blow. After hearing this, Yushin narrowed his eyes slightly, just one blow? Can you tell me the whole thing in detail? Bulma nodded and began to narrate. The incident started when Goku arrived in an extremely cold place, where residents frequently disappeared. It was later discovered that these people were captured by the Red Ribbon Legion for experiments on artificial humans. When Yushin heard this, his brows furrowed, and there was a chill in his voice. The Red Ribbon Legion, the lesson they received last time was obviously not enough, and they dare to act so arrogantly. Bulma continued, after Goku learned the truth, he decided to intervene in the matter. After in-depth investigation, he found that Dr. Kekken was behind all this. Dr. Kekken? Yushin felt a little surprised. He thought it was Dr. Gero who was behind all this, but unexpectedly it was Dr. Kekken. Bulma explained, yes, that's him. Dr. Kekken is a well-known figure in the academic world. I have heard of him before. He used to be Dr. Willow's assistant, but then both of them disappeared mysteriously. Unexpectedly, he is now working for the Red Ribbon Army. Yushin's eyes flashed with a sharp chill, and he asked in a deep voice, so, it was Kekken who ordered Violet to seriously injure Goku. Bulma shook her head gently and explained, that's not the case. Violet has separated from the Red Ribbon Army. Moreover, she seems to have some kind of personal grudge with Dr. Kekken. Yushin frowned slightly and continued to ask, then why on earth did she attack Goku? Bulma recalled, she seemed to just want to warn Goku and ask him not to interfere in this matter. As for the specific reason, Goku didn't know. Violet left after knocking Goku unconscious. After hearing this, Yushin nodded slowly, I understand. It seems that we have to find an opportunity to completely eradicate the Red Ribbon Legion, otherwise they will eventually become a serious problem. Bulma agreed. Yushin changed the topic and asked again, Goku's injury should be almost recovered now, right? When Bulma heard this, a smile appeared on her face. He has long since recovered and is preparing to participate in this martial arts competition. Yushin's eyes lit up and he asked, how long until this martial arts tournament starts? Bulma replied, it's about a week away. After hearing this, Yutian had a look of expectation on his face, I must take a good look at your performance this time. Bulma seemed a little modest, there are so many masters in the martial arts competition, but I may not be sure of victory. Yu Tian secretly thought in his heart that with Bulma's current combat power of 25,000, his status in Frisia's legion may exceed Vegeta's, and he can truly dominate the earth. But he did not express this idea, he just smiled and said, I believe you will achieve good results. The two chatted for a while, and the atmosphere gradually became warm and relaxed. Bulma suddenly asked shyly, Yushin, we have known each other for so long, haven't you ever thought about moving forward? Yushin was stunned when he heard this, and replied with some confusion, have we not done everything we should do? How can we develop? He didn't expect that Bulma would suddenly raise this question, and he couldn't react for a while. Bulma was so embarrassed that her ears turned red after hearing Yu Tian's answer. She glared at Yu Tian, pouted her lips pretending to be angry, and said angrily, you're here again. You try to take advantage of me every time. When Yushin saw this, he immediately realized that he might have misunderstood what Bulma meant. He explained, Bulma, you misunderstood. I didn't mean that. I meant that we are already very close friends. I don't know how you want to develop. Bulma's expression softened slightly after hearing this. She turned around, looked at Yushin, and said seriously, Yushin, I mean, when are you going to marry me? By the end, her voice had become very small, as if only she could hear it. After hearing this, Yushin understood instantly. He felt in a daze. It turns out that Bulma hopes that the two of them can go further and get married. He stared into Bulma's eyes and answered seriously, Bulma, I need to think about this issue carefully. Marriage is a big event, and I need time to prepare. Bulma was a little disappointed after hearing Yushin's answer, but she also understood that Yushin was telling the truth. She nodded and said softly, I know, I will wait for you. Yushin looked at Bulma's eyes that were full of expectation but slightly disappointed, and felt a throbbing in his heart for no reason. He knew very well that the relationship between him and Bulma had already gone beyond the boundaries of ordinary friends. And marriage is undoubtedly the most perfect destination for this relationship. He gently held Bulma's hand and said slowly, Bulma, I hope that after we get married, we can be together often, instead of being separated for 1 or 2 years like now. So, I need time to prepare. Having said this, Yushin paused and looked at Bulma, but, I can assure you, it won't be too long. Yushin planned that the marriage between Bulma and himself could be postponed until he learned how to teleport. He didn't want the two of them to spend less time together and more time apart after getting married. Bulma nodded slightly to express understanding. When Yushin saw this, a warm current surged in his heart, and he gently hugged Bulma into his arms. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, the registration day for the 22nd World's #1 Martial Arts Conference came. The early morning sun shines through the clouds and onto the bustling registration site, adding a bit of warmth to the lively scene. Yushin and Bulma arrived early, and they shuttled among the crowd, looking around for familiar figures. Gaku, Teacher Yushin, long time no see. With his keen sense of chi, Yushin quickly caught the breath of Son Goku and came Senin in the crowd. He shouted and waved. Son Goku heard Yushin's voice and immediately looked back. Seeing Yushin and Bulma, a surprised smile appeared on his face. He walked over quickly and said hello, Yushin. Bulma. Long time no see. Kame Senin also walked over with a smile, looked at Bulma with his eyes, and then said, Haha, Bulma, I didn't expect you to sign up for the competition this time. Bulma smiled slightly and said modestly, my focus is on participation, and I'm mainly here to learn from you. Just as everyone was laughing and laughing, a discordant voice suddenly sounded in their ears, little girl, you are quite self-aware. Chapter 64. This voice was harsh and sarcastic. Yushin frowned and looked around, his eyes showing displeasure. This person has a unique image, wearing a green shirt with a striking crane logo on his chest, and a black hat decorated with a bird that looks like a crane. It was Kame Senin's old rival, Crane Senin. He was staring closely at Bulma at the moment, with a disdainful smile on his face like a sharp blade. Yushin said coldly, where did the bad old man come from? Are you impatient with life? Hexianren slowly turned his gaze to Yushin, with contempt in his eyes, and said without mercy, are you also a disciple of Turtle Immortal? You look like a waste. Turtle Immortal suddenly became angry, Crane Immortal, be careful what you say, this is not a place for you to act wild. But Hexianren laughed loudly, as if he heard some joke, and said arrogantly, Kame Zenren, when will you be able to take care of me again? Just then, Tianjin Rice and Dumplings came over. Ding! Meeting the Dragon Ball plot character Tianjin Fan can transform the host into a combat power of 180. Does the host need to be transformed? Ding! When you meet the character Dumpling in the Dragon Ball plot, you can transform the host into a combat power of 110. May I ask if the host needs to be transformed? Not converting for the time being. At this moment, the fighting power of Tianjin Rice and Dumplings is not even considered as mosquito meat for Yushin. It is better to raise it for a while and then transform it if a miracle happens in the future. Tianjin Fan looked at everyone present and said, Master, this is the turtle immortal you mentioned? He doesn't look very good either. Turtle Immortal glanced at the Tianjin Rice and Dumplings and asked, these two are your new disciples? Hexianren smiled proudly and said provocatively, that's right, your apprentices were so weak last time, but you still had the nerve to come out and embarrass yourself. I had no choice but to let my two apprentices come out to let everyone see what a true martial artist is. Son Goku on the side couldn't stand listening anymore and said angrily, you're such a nasty person to talk to. You can tell you're not a good person at first glance. Crane Immortal laughed indifferently, I'm just telling the truth. Then, he turned to Tianjin Rice and Dumplings and said, let's go, Tianjin Rice and Dumplings. Don't be merciful on the playing field. Tianjin Fan glanced at Turtle Immortal and the others with disdain, curled up a sneer at the corner of his mouth, then turned around and followed He Immortal away. Wait! A voice suddenly sounded, stopping Master Hexian and his disciples who were about to leave. Immortal he turned around unexpectedly and saw Yu Tian standing there without fear, looking at them calmly. Boy, do you have any advice? Hexianren said gloomily, with a hint of disdain and threat in his tone. Do you want to take action here? Don't forget, causing trouble will result in disqualification from the competition. Yushin remained unmoved and spoke slowly, I'm not a competitor, so how can I be disqualified from the competition? Hexianren was slightly startled when he heard this, obviously he didn't expect Yu Tian to respond like this. He quickly regained his sinister expression and said sarcastically, oh? It seems that you are quite self-aware, this loser. However, provoking me is not a wise move. But Yu Tian smiled faintly and didn't care about the threat from Hexianren, you were the one who was unwise. Now, if you come over and kowtow to my girlfriend Bulma 3 times and apologize, I might be able to spare you. A hole. The Tianjin Fan on the side couldn't stand listening anymore and shouted angrily, who do you think you are? How dare you be so rude to my master? Hexianren's face also became extremely ugly. He stared at Yushin gloomily, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Boy, I think you are tired of living. However, Yushin still maintained his calmness. He spoke slowly, as if announcing an irresistible fate, you still have 3 seconds to think about it. Once the time is up, apologizing will not help. BD thing. Hexianren could no longer bear Yushin's provocation and ridicule. He flashed and turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Yushin, intending to teach Yushin a profound lesson. Hexianren was seen aiming at Yu Tian's head, condensing all his strength into his palm, and struck Yu Tian hard with one palm. A cruel smile appeared on his face, as if he had foreseen the scene of Yu Tian falling to the ground. Boy, learn how to behave with your tail between your legs in the next life. Immortal, he said mockingly, the wind roaring in his palm, approaching Yu Tian's front door. However, just when he thought he was about to succeed, his eyes suddenly flashed with flowers. Yushin's figure disappeared in front of his eyes, and then appeared next to him in an instant. Yu Tian moved quickly and accurately restrained Hexianren's arm with one hand. This is impossible. Hexianren shouted in shock, he couldn't believe that he was captured by Yu Tian in an instant. Yu Tian sneered and said mockingly, a frog at the bottom of a well doesn't know whether to live or die. His voice was cold and contemptuous, making the Crane Immortal feel a sense of fear. Immediately afterwards, Yu Tian exerted force on his palm, and there was a crisp click sound, and Hexianren's entire arm was broken by Yu Tian. Hexianren screamed in pain, and his face instantly turned pale. But Yu Tian had no intention of stopping, and he punched Hexianren's other arm. The power of this punch was astonishing, and with a loud bang sound, Hexianren's other arm was directly broken by Yu Tian's punch. The stump of the severed arm flew out, blood splattered everywhere, and the scene was horrific. Crane Immortal couldn't bear the severe pain and let out a shrill wail. His face had become twisted and ferocious, and large beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. However, Yushin did not stop his attack. He quickly kicked out with 2 kicks, directly hitting Hsienren's legs and knees. Just hearing two crisp sounds, Hsienren's legs had been completely destroyed by Yu Tian. He could no longer support his body and fell softly to the ground, groaning in pain. He no longer had the arrogance he had before. But Yushin stood aside coldly, without any mercy in his eyes, as if he deserved all this. Master! Tianjin Fan exclaimed and rushed over to check the Hsienren's injuries. His face was full of anxiety and anger, and his eyes revealed deep hostility towards Yushin. Crane Immortal collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain, and his limbs twisted weakly. Tianjin Fan raised his head angrily, stared at Yu Tian fiercely, and roared, "Boy, you are so vicious. My master has no grudge against you, but you are going to do this to him." However, Yushin's expression remained unchanged and he said indifferently, "Your master just struck me with a palm strike. If he were an ordinary person, his life would have been lost. I crippled his limbs today but spared him a small life. I have done my best to benevolent and righteous." Hateful. At this moment, Tianjin Fan no longer cared about the rules of the martial arts conference. He suddenly rushed towards Yushin, intending to avenge his master. Chapter 65. Tianjin Fan yelled at Yushin, "I will save your life here today." However, the reality is much crueler than he imagined. Yushin moved and quickly rushed to Tianjin Fan's side. With a crisp pop sound, he slapped Tianjin Fan hard on the face. Tianjin Fan felt a huge force coming, and his whole body flew out like a cannonball faster than when he came in. Boom! A loud bang. The Tianjin rice hit the ground hard, kicking up a cloud of dust. He struggled to sit up, reached out to cover his burning cheeks, and spat out a mouthful of bloody spit. His eyes were full of anger and unwillingness, but more importantly, he was frightened by Yushin's strength. Yu Tian looked at Tianjin Fan coldly and said, "Tianjin Fan, you are a smart man. You should be aware of what Hexian did. I don't want you to continue to go astray and destroy your future." Tianjin Fan glanced at Yushin fiercely, then remained silent for a moment, then lifted up Hsienren who collapsed on the ground, and said to the dumpling beside him, "Dumplings, let's go." Finally, in full view of the public, Hsienren, Tianjin Fan and Daisy left the martial arts conference in embarrassment. Their backs quickly disappeared from everyone's sight, leaving only scattered comments. Turtle Immortal witnessed all this. He shook his head with a look of regret on his face. Hsienren has himself to blame. It's just a pity that those two young people were led astray by him. His voice was full of helplessness. As Hsienren and his party left, Yushin accompanied Bulma towards the preliminaries venue of the martial arts tournament. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, the preliminaries of the martial arts tournament were over. With their outstanding performance, Bulma and Son Goku successfully passed the preliminaries and advanced to the next round. Although this news was expected by Yushin, it still made him feel relieved, and he decided to celebrate it. So, Yushin specially booked a most luxurious restaurant and invited Son Goku and Bulma to come with him. The table was filled with all kinds of delicacies, and the atmosphere was particularly warm. "Haha, Yushin, what a pity you are not here today," Son Goku said while eating, his tone full of admiration. "Bulma is so powerful, no one can last around under her." Yushin smiled when he heard this. Bulma's combat power has now reached an astonishing 25,000 points. Yushin is only afraid that she will control her strength improperly during the game and accidentally kill her opponent. Bulma chuckled from the side and said, "The preliminaries are just an appetizer after all. In the end, it all depends on the performance in the finals." After hearing this, Son Goku waved his hands and said sincerely, "Bulma, please stop being modest. I watched your game, and to be honest, I couldn't even see your movements clearly. You are so awesome." Turtle Immortal also laughed when he heard this. "It's really amazing, Bulma. I didn't expect that you have improved a lot in just a few years. It seems that you are expected to win this martial arts competition." Bulma responded humbly, "Haha, I feel embarrassed when you praise me so much. In fact, Goku is also very powerful. He has also made great progress this time." At this time, Yushin suddenly remembered something and asked, "Bulma, didn't you see Yamcha in this preliminaries? Compared with ordinary martial arts masters, Yamcha is considered to be quite powerful. If he participated in this martial arts competition, he should be able to pass the preliminaries, right?" Bulma thought for a moment and replied, "I don't seem to have seen him. I guess he didn't attend the martial arts conference this time." Turtle Immortal slowly spoke at this time, with a look of reminiscence on his face. The Yamcha you are talking about, is there always a pet that can transform by his side? He once came to me and wanted to learn from me. When Yushin heard this, he immediately became interested. He leaned forward and asked curiously, "Oh? There is such a thing? Teacher Wu Tian, didn't you give him some guidance at that time?" Turtle Immortal shook his head slightly, a complex emotion flashed in his eyes. He sighed and said, "Ever since Clin disappeared, I really didn't have the heart to take on another apprentice. So, I rejected him." Speaking of Clin, everyone else present also fell silent. Son Goku threw the leftover bones on the table and said firmly, "Clin is my partner, I will definitely find him." In order to lighten the atmosphere, Yushin changed the topic and chuckled, "By the way, who can tell me who the top 8 are this time?" Bulma smiled slightly, took out a brochure from her side and handed it to Yushin. "I asked for a brochure in advance, please take a look." Yushin took the brochure, and the first thing that caught his eye was the cover with the mummy of the previous champion. He looked at it, with a smile on his face, and then turned to the list of the top 8 matches. He scanned the battle table line by line, and then read, the first game, Babut vs King Jaiba, the second game, Devilman vs Mummy, the third game. After reading this, Yushin paused, and he looked up at Bulma and Son Goku. "Bulma vs Son Goku, I didn't expect you two to meet in the quarterfinals." Hearing this, Bulma said half-jokingly, "Yeah, Goku, you have to be merciful on the field when the time comes." Son Goku shook his head seriously. He threw a piece of dough into his mouth and said vaguely while eating, "No, I watched your game. I have to show my full strength, otherwise I may not be your opponent." When Yushin heard this, he couldn't help but smile to himself. He knew that Son Goku's strength had indeed improved a lot, but there was still a certain gap compared to Bulma. Even if Son Goku learns Kaioken now, he may not be able to defeat Bulma. However, he also knew that Son Goku had a character that refused to admit defeat, so he did not say it directly. Yushin continued to look at the brochure, and then read, the fourth game is Nama vs Longji. It seems that there are some new faces in this martial arts conference. Turtle Immortal laughed when he heard this and said, "If you hadn't taken action this time and damaged the spirit of He Immortal and his disciples, or with the strength of his 2 disciples, there should be no problem in entering the top 8. He Xianren was seriously injured, and Tianjin Fan was slapped hard by Yu Tian in front of everyone. The 3 masters and disciples lost their face. Naturally, they no longer wanted to participate in the martial arts conference and could only leave in despair." Yushin didn't care about this and said casually, "Even if they come to participate, it's just a formality. With Bulma and Goku's current strength, they can't be opponents at all." Just as a few people were chatting, an anxious voice suddenly sounded in the restaurant. "Teacher Wu Tian. It's not good." A figure hurried into the restaurant, his face pale and his expression flustered. "My teacher He Xianren was beaten to death on the way, and A Tian was also captured." Chapter 66. Everyone turned their heads and focused on the source of the sound. The person who came was actually the disciple of He Xianren, Dumpling. He came in a hurry, his face full of tension and worry. When Turtle Immortal heard the news that Crane Immortal is dead, his heart was shocked, and there was an unbelievable look on his face. "Don't talk nonsense. Yushin has shown mercy today. Although Hexian is old and frail, he should be able to recover as long as he rests for a few years and rests in bed." Dumpling hurriedly explained, "You misunderstood, I'm not talking about Yushin. Someone else took the opportunity to kill Mr. He Xianren." Turtle Immortal frowned and asked doubtfully, "Who is it? Haven't Tianjin Fan and you always been by his side? Why would He Xianren suffer this misfortune?" Dumpling took a deep breath and said slowly, "That man called himself Jiage and said he was from Demon City. In order to force A Tian to surrender, he actually beat teacher He Xianren to death." When Yushin heard this, his heart moved. The name Jiage caused waves in his mind. He seemed to remember that this person was a subordinate of Carrick too. At this time, Bulma turned back and said, "Yushin, do you remember? We went to Demon City before." Yushin nodded and his thoughts returned to the past. When he first came to this Dragon Ball world, he went to Demon City once with Bulma and Son Goku in search of Dragon Balls. At that time, a guard accidentally revealed the news that Carrick too was about to break the seal. Now it seems that Carrick too should have regained his freedom. Although Yushin taught Hexian and Tianjin Fan a lesson today, his impression of Dumplings was not bad. He said to Dumpling in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Tell me the whole story in detail. Dumpling nodded and began to describe what happened. In the morning, after teacher Hexianren was injured, Atian and I took him away from Papaya Island. Unexpectedly, we met this demon member Jiaj on the way. He claimed to be a subordinate of King Carrick. He said that Demon City is in urgent need of manpower and wanted Atian to join, but Atian refused. The man was so angry that he beat teacher Hexianren to death, and threatened that if Atian disagreed again, even I would be killed. In desperation, Atian had no choice but to agree and went to Demon City with him. After listening to Dumpling's narration, Yushin said calmly, I roughly understand the ins and outs of the whole thing. But to be honest, these don't seem to have much to do with me. Don't forget, just this morning, we were still hostile parties. Dumpling responded eagerly, the cause of today's incident is indeed teacher Hexianren, but he has been killed after all. Can you save Atian's life because Hexianren is teacher Wu Tian's junior brother? Turtle Immortal pondered for a moment and then slowly spoke, what you said makes sense. Although Hexianren has done many evil things, he is always my junior brother. Naturally, his disciples can also be regarded as my senior nephews. Turtle Immortal obviously already has the intention to help. Hearing this, Dumpling felt a surge of hope in his heart. Yushin frowned slightly and asked doubtfully, isn't Tianjin Fan going to be Carrick's subordinate? Why is his life in danger? Dumpling explained, Jiaji once said that Demon God City plans to transform Atian into a cyborg to make him a better warrior. Although I don't know much about cyborgs, I always feel that something is wrong with this matter. Artificial being. After hearing this, Bulma turned to Yushin in shock. I didn't expect this matter to be related to the remnants of the Red Ribbon Legion. Yushin was also quite surprised. From the description of the dumplings, he noticed that there seemed to be some kind of cooperation between Demon City and the Red Ribbon Legion. He thought for a moment and nodded, since teacher Wu Tian doesn't care about past grudges, I am also willing to go to Demon City to see what is going on. Dumpling heard this and was ecstatic. He has seen Yushin's strength before. He can destroy Hexianren with one move and send Tianjin Rice flying with one slap. He is by no means an ordinary person. Before Yushin finished speaking, Bulma and Son Goku said in unison, Yushin, I'll go with you. Yushin smiled and shook his head, aren't you still worried about my strength? You two should recharge your batteries. I will be there to watch the game tomorrow. After hearing this, Bulma was silent for a long time, and finally nodded. Son Goku warned with a solemn expression, Yushin, you must be careful of Violet from the Red Ribbon Legion. That person is very powerful. I once suffered a big loss at her hands. Yushin smiled lightly and responded, I heard that she can incapacitate you with one blow. I will pay special attention to it. Don't worry. Dumpling looked a little anxious at the moment and urged, how about we leave now? I'm worried that the situation will change. If it's too late, it will be too late. Yushin nodded. Since he had agreed to the dumplings, he didn't want to delay any longer. He simply said hello to Bulma and the others, and then flew towards the Demon City with Dumpling. Time flies. Yushin and Dumpling soon appeared within the influence of Demon City. Coming to Demon God City again, Yushin couldn't help but feel a little emotional. When he first came here, he was still a newcomer full of curiosity about the world. Now, more than 4 years later, he has become one of the top strong men in the universe. Yushin signaled Dumpling to follow him closely, and then he strode towards the interior of Demon City. Their arrival did not escape the alert of the guards, and 2 guards immediately stepped forward to stop them. Who? How dare you break into the Demon City? The guards shouted loudly. A sneer appeared at the corner of Yu Tian's lips. He waved his hand gently, and an invisible force burst out instantly. The 2 guards fainted as if they had been hit by a heavy hammer. In this way, relying on Yushin's super strength, the 2 of them arrived at the entrance of the main hall deep in the Demon City without any hindrance. Before they entered the main hall, they heard a low and majestic voice coming from inside. Jiaji, this is the new subordinate you found for me? It seems to be pretty good. Yu Tian secretly guessed that this voice should be Carrick too. Then, they heard Jiaji's flattering laughter, haha, thank you for the compliment, your majesty. This Tianjin fan is indeed a rare talent. Carrick too seemed to be very interested in Tianjin rice. He asked, your name is Tianjin fan, right? Now I'll give you a chance to surrender to me, are you willing? Tianjin fan replied without hesitation, bah. You killed my master and you still want me to surrender? It's a joke. I am definitely not that kind of person. Ji-H suddenly became anxious when he heard this, and he roared, "You clearly agreed at the beginning. I didn't expect that as a martial artist, you would go back on your word." Tianjin Fan snorted coldly, "That's because you used my friend's life to threaten me. I'm just compromising for the time being." Ji-H was furious when he heard Tianjin Fan's words. He roared and swooped towards Tianjin Fan like an arrow, intending to give Tianjin Fan a severe lesson. At this critical moment, a deafening explosion suddenly came from the hall. I saw Yushin standing at the door of the hall, and he struck the solid iron door with an extremely fierce palm. The heavy iron door broke away from the door frame in an instant and turned into a black afterimage, flying towards Ji-H at lightning speed. Ji-H was stunned by this sudden turn of events, and his figure that was originally rushing towards Tianjin Fan suddenly stagnated in the air. He stared at the rapidly approaching iron door with wide eyes and a face full of horror, without any time to react. Boom! There was another earth-shattering loud noise. The iron door hit Ji-H hard, and the huge impact made him fly backwards as if struck by lightning. For a time, the entire sealed hall was swept by a huge air wave, dust and debris flew everywhere like a storm, and the scene was chaotic. Chapter 67. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed. Keter-class suddenly stood up from the throne and roared with a livid face, "BD, who dares to cause trouble under the nose of me, Keter-class?" His voice echoed in the hall, carrying an arrogant and domineering tone. Yushin walked into the hall casually, his eyes calmly swept over everyone, and finally landed on Keter-class. He spoke slowly, with a hint of joking in his tone, "It's me. Why, you seem a little dissatisfied with my appearance." Tianjin Fan heard the sound and followed it. The moment he saw Yu Tian, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect that Yushin would appear at this critical moment. Immediately afterwards, Tianjin Fan saw the dumplings next to Yu Tian, and his face immediately showed an anxious look. "Dumpling, why are you back again? Didn't I tell you to run away quickly?" Dumpling looked at the Tianjin rice and said softly, "Tian, I'm worried that you are in danger, so I specifically asked Yu Tian to help save you." Tianjin Fan was slightly shocked when he heard this. He didn't expect that Yushin would take the risk to save him. He looked at Yushin with a complicated expression. Yu Tian glanced at Tianjin Fan lightly and said, "After all, you are also a junior of teacher Wu Tian. His Ayanran is dead, and I don't want to pursue the past things anymore. I hope that after today, you can change your ways." When Keter-class heard this, his face turned gloomy. He looked at Yushin coldly and said through gritted teeth, "You seem to be a little too naive. If you disturb the order of my demon city today, you will never leave alive." But Yushin just smiled contemptuously and said, "Oh? Really? I'm afraid I'll disappoint you. Because today, the person who dies is probably you." "A hole!" Keter-class roared angrily. His eyes looked back and forth on Yu Tian, trying to discern the depth of his strength. Although Keter-class was angry, he was not a fool. Judging from the strength that Yu Tian had just shown, he was by no means an ordinary person. He took a deep breath, turned around and shouted to his men, "Licky, go and get this guy. Let him know how powerful we are." However, Licky did not act immediately. He stood tremblingly, with a look of fear on his face. Keter-class frowned and said angrily, "What? How dare you disobey my orders?" Licky swallowed and said with difficulty, "King Keter-class, Jij, he was just beaten to death by that man." His voice was trembling and weak, as if he was afraid of offending Keter-class. "What?" Keter-class turned around suddenly and looked at where Jij was. Jij was seen lying on the ground, motionless, with no sign of life. This scene made Keter-class's heart sink, and he realized that he might really have encountered a strong enemy this time. Yushin stood calmly in the center of the hall, his eyes like a torch, scanning Keter-class and his men. "What, aren't you trying to capture me? Why haven't you seen any action?" When Keter-class heard this, the muscles on his face twitched slightly. He could no longer bear Yushin's provocation and roared, "Licky, Shinsu, you two, hurry up and capture him for me." Licky and Shinsu stood aside, looking at each other. They knew that Yushin's strength was not trivial, but under the perennial power of Keter-class, they had no choice but to bite the bullet and pounce on Yushin. Licky yelled, trying to embolden himself, "Boy, just accept your death." A cold light flashed in Yu Tian's eyes, and with a wave of his hand, 2 Qigong bombs roared out and went straight towards Li Qi and Shansu. The Qigong bomb was extremely fast and had a fierce momentum. Licky and Shinsu were unable to dodge at all. They could only watch the Qigong bombs approaching, feeling a sense of despair in their hearts. Boom! Boom! Two loud noises came one after another, deafening. The huge explosion shook the entire hall constantly, as if it would collapse at any time. The generated air waves swept across, sending dust and debris in the hall flying all over the sky. After the smoke dissipated, calm returned to the hall, except that Li Qi and Shansu were missing. Under Yushin's extremely powerful attack, they failed to leave even a trace, as if they disappeared out of thin air, with no bones left. When Keter-class saw this, his expression suddenly changed. He didn't expect that Yushin's strength was so powerful that even his capable men were no match for him. An inexplicable fear surged in his heart, and he began to re-examine this seemingly young opponent. Tianjin Fan on the side witnessed the whole process. His eyes widened and he was extremely shocked. He had personally experienced the strength of Keter-class's men and knew how powerful and difficult they were. However, at this moment, these masters were like paper tigers in front of Yushin, collapsing at the first touch. Yu Tian was naturally too lazy to care what Tianjin Fan thought. He faced Keter-class with a smile on his lips. None of your men seem to be very useful. Now you are the only one left. When are you going to take action? When Keter-class heard Yu Tian's taunt, a surge of anger suddenly surged in his heart. He was about to take action against Yushin, when suddenly, his eyes flashed, as if the whole world was turned upside down. He was shocked to find that his neck was pinched tightly by a strong hand, and his whole body was lifted up effortlessly like a chicken. Looking up, he saw Yu Tian staring at him coldly, with endless chill in his eyes. Keter-class's heart trembled, and he immediately understood the huge gap in strength between himself and Yushin. He swallowed hard and began to try to negotiate with Yushin. Is your name Yushin? Maybe there is some misunderstanding between us. After hearing this, Yushin couldn't help but feel a little funny. He released Keter-class's neck and asked, what misunderstanding? Keter-class felt the pressure on his neck disappear, and he breathed a sigh of relief. He did not dare to neglect at all, and quickly continued to explain, actually, it was not my intention to arrest your friend this time. I had to do so after receiving instructions from the Red Ribbon Legion. Hearing this, Yushin frowned slightly and asked doubtfully, can the Red Ribbon Legion give you orders? With the strength of Keter-class, he is already regarded as the top existence on Earth. According to common sense, the Red Ribbon Army did not have the ability to make Keter-class surrender. Keter-class nodded, with a bitter smile on his face. Chapter 68. Yu Tian slowly asked, how many martial arts masters have you kidnapped so far? Keter-class did not dare to neglect and answered quickly, your friend is the first one. The original plan was to go to the world's #1 martial arts conference and capture all the contestants. Yushin nodded and continued, do you know where the Red Ribbon Legion base is? Take me there. When Keter-class heard this, he was very happy. He has always been suffering from the Red Ribbon Legion and cannot escape their control. This time Yushin proposed to go to the Red Ribbon Legion base, which was undoubtedly an excellent opportunity for him. He can take this opportunity to let Yushin and the Red Ribbon Army fight to the death, and then reap the benefits himself. Thinking of this, he quickly said, I know that their laboratory is in the area of Demon City, but the location is relatively hidden. I will take you there now. Yushin turned around, faced Tianjin rice and dumplings, and said calmly, there's nothing for you here. You two should leave first. Hearing this, Tianjin Fan immediately straightened his back and said, are you going to the Red Ribbon Legion base? I'll go with you. I don't want to owe you a favor. Yushin smiled contemptuously and said, with your little strength, you're still in the way. As for favors, don't worry about such small things. Tianjin Fan was immediately speechless. He took a deep look at Yu Tian and understood in his heart that there was indeed a huge gap between his own strength and Yu Tian. He was silent for a moment, and then said solemnly, okay, I will remember your kindness this time. I, Tianjin Fan, have always been clear about grudges and grudges. Then, Tianjin Fan turned to Keter-class again, with a chill flashing in his eyes, next time we meet, I will take your life to avenge the master. Although Jiage has been beaten to death by Yushin, in the hearts of Tianjin fans, Keter-class is the real culprit. When Keter-class heard what Tianjin Fan said, he felt aggrieved. If Yu Tian hadn't shocked him here, he would have slapped Tianjin Fan to death. However, now that the situation was pressing, he could only swallow his anger and said nothing. After Tianjin rice and dumplings left, Keter-2 took Yu Tian and flew to the Red Ribbon Legion base. Soon, the two arrived at their destination. Who? How dare you break into the Red Ribbon Legion base? As soon as the two approached, they were spotted by patrolling soldiers. At this time, a soldier who looked like a captain looked back and slapped the soldier who was speaking. What look in your eyes? King Keter doesn't recognize you either. The soldier captain scolded, and then turned to Keter-2 with a flattering look. I wonder what King Keter is here for today. After saying that, he glanced curiously at Yu Tian who was standing next to Keter-2. Keter-2 was about to answer, but suddenly he saw Yu Tian reaching out a little, and an invisible energy burst out from his hand instantly. The energy was like an arrow from a string, rushing toward the group of soldiers extremely quickly. Boom! A deafening loud noise suddenly erupted, as frightening as a thunderbolt in the clear sky. Under the impact of this powerful energy, the group of soldiers instantly collapsed and turned into a mess. Yu Tian glanced at Keter-2 casually and said lightly, "Continue to lead the way." Although his voice was calm, it revealed an unquestionable majesty. Keter-2 was stunned by Yu Tian's hand, and an inexplicable fear surged in his heart. He knew that Yushin's strength was far superior to his own, and he did not dare to show any slightness at this moment. He quickly calmed down and continued to lead Yu Tian towards the depths of the Red Ribbon Army. Yushin's movement of killing the soldiers was like pebbles thrown into a calm lake, instantly causing an uproar. Others in the Red Ribbon Legion were alerted, and a large number of soldiers quickly gathered nearby like a tide. Yu Tian glanced at the soldiers swarming over, turned to Keter-2 and said, "I'll leave all the rest to you." Although Keter-2 felt helpless, for the sake of his own life, he had no choice but to take action. He took a deep breath, burst out powerful energy, and pounced on the soldiers like lightning. Under Keter-2's crazy attack, the soldiers of the Red Ribbon Legion fell one after another like cut-down wheat fields. Suddenly, screams and wails broke out one after another, and the entire Red Ribbon Legion base seemed to have turned into a purgatory on Earth. "Keter, are you crazy?" Just then, an old man with a shriveled figure and wrinkles suddenly appeared. He stared at Keter-2 angrily, with blazing anger in his eyes, and was extremely shocked by Keter-2's behavior. When Keter-2 saw this, he smiled softly, "Dr. Kekin, long time no see." Dr. Kekin stared at Keter-2 indifferently and said word by word, "Keter, give me a reasonable explanation, otherwise, you will not be able to leave here alive today." As Dr. Kekin finished speaking, the three men around him immediately stood up and approached Keter-2 menacingly. Their eyes were full of hostility, as if they were ready to take action at any time. When Keter-2 saw these three people, his eyes narrowed slightly. He quietly leaned behind Yu Tian, as if he wanted to find a shelter. At this moment, Dr. Kekin noticed Yu Tian, who had been standing aside silently. He looked Yushin up and down, and suddenly a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, as if he recognized something. "Your name is Yu Tian, right?" Dr. Kekin spoke slowly. "The culprit who destroyed the Red Ribbon Legion base in the first place. I didn't expect that before we came to trouble you, you brought it to our door yourself first." When Yushin heard this, he looked up at Dr. Kekin and said calmly, "Are you Kekin? It seems that you have done a lot of research on me. The sudden death of the Red Ribbon Legion soldier was probably your fault." Dr. Kekin snorted coldly and admitted, "Yes, those soldiers are just a group of puppets. The artificial man project was at a critical moment at that time, and I couldn't let them expose the location of the laboratory." Yushin continued to ask, "Where is Dr. Gro? I remember that he seems to be the chief scientist of the Red Ribbon Army." When Dr. Kekin heard Dr. Gru's name, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect Yushin's understanding of the Red Ribbon Legion to be so in-depth. He said in a deep voice, "That happened a long time ago. Now that we have joined the Red Ribbon Army, naturally there is no place for him anymore." Hearing this, Yu Tian chuckled and said, "It turns out you squeezed him away, which is quite interesting." Dr. Kekin ignored Yushin's teasing, his expression was cold. "It just so happens that we will settle the old and new accounts together today." Yushin said calmly, "Then we have to see if you have the strength." Keter-2 on the side heard the conversation between the two and secretly rejoiced in his heart. He expected that Yushin and Dr. Kekin would fight to the death, so that he could reap the benefits. Dr. Kekin saw this and shouted, "Jizamai, Miss Oz and Abelius, you three come on for me." As his order fell, the three elite warriors immediately rushed towards Yushin. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.